Texas does a fucking awesome job, so I'm just waiting on them. But I got a lot of tracks to send them. So let's get started. Now let's raise the frequency back up.
Yeah.
The sky so far away tonight, but I can't lose this one. Get a pride of the falling night. Thought that I was fit to fight for us to be. You gave me life for loving me. Tell me, where did we go so wrong?
Raw consciousness does not require a savior, but rather, raw consciousness requires only knowledge of oneself and the power to access it. Remember this, as we unlock an even greater gnosis from beyond the veil.
From the fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, good morning, good evening, or wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm Chris Geo. I will be taking you beyond the veil this evening. I'm joined, of course, by my lovely wife, twin, and co-host, Mrs. Geo.
Good evening, everyone.
So I just want to clear something up really quick.
Okay.
Co-host. What does that mean?
It means that you lead the show and I follow your lead.
No, co-host means that you are the host also.
Oh, well.
I'm also your co-host.
Well, yeah, but I see you as like, okay, so Chris is the guy. He's like the talent, the main talent here.
I'm just the better looking one.
I'm just the backup singer.
Just kidding.
I'm kind of a backup singer. Because your ideas, the way that you present your ideas is so professional and it's so well thought out.
I'm the plumpier one. There's more of me.
Well, yeah, there's more of you to go around. But no, you really you express yourself so professionally that and you basically say all the things that I was going to say anyway. So I have no problem at all with you leading the show.
Okay.
So.
Well, I just wanted to put it on record. Co-host means that I'm
also the host.
You're my co-host, and I am your co-host.
Oh,
so it's even.
We're both co-hosts.
We're both
equal
co-hosts because co-host means like together.
Right.
Like you host it together.
Right.
So, all right. Now that we got that cleared up, I want to say thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you to all of our Patreons at patreon.com/BTV Tribe. And some people in the comments, I don't know if we're going to cut out the songs of the free archive or not, but they were talking about the loudness wars. And I remember that in the 90s where everybody would like just stick like limiters on their master buses of their songs and try to make them as loud as possible. And they sounded like garbage. I hated that. Luckily, that fad has gone away. Now it's about clarity and depth and bringing everything out in the stereo field. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the loudest. It just has to be the clearest sound. So that's where I was going with that.
The deepest sound.
The deepest sound. Yes. And I'm glad the music has come back to that. But the music itself, I don't know. Maybe I sound like my father. Today's music is just crap. It really is. But let's switch the topic, though, to the topic that is at hand here. Like I was saying, we had a really rough week. I got some dental surgery. Cherie had a rhizotomy. And so we were just like exhausted. So what do we do when we're exhausted? We get up here and we bring the best that we possibly can and vibe with all the tribe out there. It's about vibing with the tribe. #vibe with the tribe. Oh, that's pretty good. You know what? I should probably buy that domain, Vibe with the Tribe.
Vibe with the Tribe. Oh, that's nice. I like that.
Yeah. But because there's been so many restrictions on the things that we've been able to talk about, and because we've talked about a lot of the things that have been restricted and we've had to talk in code, I figured let's change it up a little bit. Let's talk about time travel. Let's talk about something a little bit lighter and kind of, go back over some older stuff from a new perspective. Of course, we have the whole idea of Trump being a time traveler. And that was something that came out in 2016. And then John Titor also, many of you may remember the story of John Titor. He was a guy that popped up on a message board, very much like Q. And this is why the similarities between John Titor and Q kind of stuck out when I first heard about Q. And then, of course, Q said a few things like trust sessions, for example, and just all kinds of stuff that just wasn't, it didn't add up. But John Titor was on message boards back in 2000 making all these predictions, saying that he came back from the year 2036. And that he'd come back and he was looking for a specific IBM computer. And he had to go back to the 70s to get this IBM computer because they needed to use the Unix system that was in this particular model of this particular IBM computer. And he had to take it back to the future to fix the AI systems that they have up in the future. And he made a series of predictions. One of the main things that stuck out about John Titor that I find very interesting is that he was looking for a specific computer. And he said he had to jump from the 70s here to 2000, or to 2000 back then when it was, and go back to the future. And I think he was either from 2036 or...
He was from 2036.
He was from 2036. Okay, so that's 16 years from now.
Yeah.
And he made a few predictions as to what the world is going to be like. He made predictions about civil war. He made predictions about YouTube. He made several predictions like that. The most interesting thing I find about John Titor is that the person that developed the particular IBM computer itself. Do you have the name of that computer on the screen by any chance?
Yes.
If not, we're going to get into it.
I had it right.
If you have it,
here.
that's great. If you can jump in.
Yes. It was the IBM.
It's okay. We can get to it.
5100.
Okay, the IBM 5100. Now, here's the interesting thing, is he knew that the IBM 5100 had a Unix code in it that was able to debug the systems that he was trying to debug in the future. It didn't come out until 10 years later that the creator of this IBM 5100 went back into the Unix code and realized, holy crap, this computer can do what John Titor was claiming that he was coming back for. The creator of the computer himself didn't realize that it was capable of doing that. What do you think about that?
Well, I think John Titor said in an Art Bell forum post from February 1st, 2001, and this is condensed. He said the 5100 had a very simple and unique feature that IBM did not account for and decided it was not in their best interest to advertise, which in hindsight was not very smart. This accidental feature was thus removed from any future desktop computers. In order to take advantage of this feature, the 5100 I have now required a couple of special tweaks that had to be done by one of the software engineers in 1975. Anyone who's familiar with this feature and was told to keep their mouth shut about it will be able to tell you what it is. Yes, we still have toilet tissue, and some people still suffer from extreme anal fixation.
Okay, isn't that strange?
That is strange.
That he mentions toilet tissue?
Yeah. What happened when the Chinese virus first hit?
Toilet paper was a big thing.
Toilet paper was a huge deal.
It was like, people were selling like dime bags of it.
Yeah,
and stuff
people
like
were
that,
about to like riot over it.
Yeah. We got a super chat from Truth Hip Hop Consciousness.
Thank you,
That's
Truth
an
Hip Hop
awesome name, dude. I'm gonna
That's
have to
a really
check out
good
your
name.
channel, Truth Hip Hop Consciousness, because I'm all about that too. Love you guys. Keep up the great work. Gergs. Oh, it's Gergs. Oh, much love, brother.
Hi, Gergs.
Much love. So that is awesome. Also, Gergs, I want to invite you to any of my music that you can download in full at chrisgeomusic.com. You scroll down right on top of the player. There's something that you click on that says download full album, and there I've got all my hip hop music. Feel free to upload it to your channel, and my music is a gift for the world, so feel free to upload it to your channel if your channel is about truth, hip-hop consciousness. So thank you for the super chat. So John Titor was a very interesting character. Now, there's a YouTube video of a guy that went around and tried to debunk John Titor, and he determined that it was a guy coming out of Florida, And he went on this whole thing, and there's this whole YouTube video debunking it, finding out who it was, the hoax behind it, all of that. When it comes to Q, there's also some audio of the owner of 8chan as well, talking about how they're going to monetize the whole Q idea and all of that. And there's supposedly a debunked expose about Q as well, and that it was concocted by the owner of 8chan. Some people would disagree out there. And you know who it is that I'm talking to out there. I see you in the chat room. But I'm keeping a neutral position as far as that goes. However, so we do have two sides of the story. And so, I just wanted to put that other side of the story that this guy did an investigation and determined that it could have possibly been some guy pulling a hoax way back then in 2000. And this hoax was very elaborate because he sent a fax to Art Bell, who was hosting Coast to Coast AM at the time. George Norrie is currently hosting it. To the best of my knowledge, I have to admit I haven't listened to Coast since about 2015. I've talked about my experiences with Coast Gaia TV in the past, so I won't be redundant as far as that goes, but let me just say I didn't want to get involved. But I think George might still be hosting Coast. I know that Art passed away not too long ago, and he started Midnight in the Desert. No. I think that was the name of his radio show. And
Midnight in the Desert.
Midnight in the Desert. And unfortunately, his health was declining. And I know that there was a big rivalry between George and Art for a long time because Art didn't like the way that Coast to Coast was, the direction that Coast to Coast was taking. And so Art, rest in peace. He was one of the first broadcasters that I started listening to and got me interested in doing radio. As a matter of fact, I was on the way back. It's so funny how this all ties in together. I was driving back from a George Carlin show, and it was in another city from where I lived, and I was with my father. Me and him had decided to go see George Carlin. Now, Carlin, of course, was a big truth teller in his comedy, and we were driving back, and on the way back, he turned on the radio, and there was a guy talking on the radio, and he was talking about the arc of millions of years. And I thought, this is very fascinating stuff. This is actually very, very, very interesting. And he wrote a book called Arc of Millions of Years. And it was about how there were two Earths. There's one that's 4.6 billion years old. And there's another one that was 6,000 years old. And these two Earths merged into one. And he was a scientist. And his name was Brooks Agnew. And I started listening to that show as we were driving back from George Carlin, and I thought, this is really fascinating. I had 12s in my truck back then, too. I had a Dodge Ram. You remember my Dodge Ram. And I specifically bought the Mega Cab because the Mega Cab had room for 12s in the back. Instead of going under the seats, it had a little bit of space in the back.
Well, and there was a lot of room in the back seat directly behind the front seat.
Yeah, and I needed that
and
for work.
And you needed that for work
Yeah.
and also to lay in while I drove us to Santa Fe.
Yeah. So
I'm just kidding.
that is very true. That is very true because we got a nice super chat from Ozzy Bullish.
Thank you, Ozzy.
I'd love to do this show and YouTube beautiful shows. I do love the show and YouTube beautiful shows. Much love to you. Thank you very much for the very generous super chat. So yeah, I picked you up from Santa Fe. I mean, from where you were living in Tyler, and took you to Santa Fe to go see David Icke, and kidnapped you from your family. And I slept most of the way there and most of the way back, and she was pissed off at me. And she still, to this day, I catch shit for it.
No, I was just joking. I was just teasing. No, he's driven a lot. In the last several times that we've driven anywhere, he's driven a lot. So.
No. I sleep and she
He's
does
a sweetheart.
driving. So anyways,
Okay.
so I was listening and it was Brooks Agnew, and I thought, wow, I really enjoy this. And I started finding myself listening to more talk radio than I did music. And the 12s finally came out of the car because I thought, there's no reason to bump George Norrie's voice or Art Bell's voice or Brooks Agnew's voice. They don't need the bass. They already have the bass there already as it is. And then I was listening to Coast again, and there was this guy on there, And this guy just had this voice. George was referring to him as the bulldog, and he was talking about 9/11. He's like, George, let me tell you something. 9/11 was this, and 9/11 was that, and et cetera, et cetera. It was a round table with 4 different people, and it turned out to be Alex Jones.
That's hilarious.
And so I started listening to more. Then I got a Prison Planet membership, and I downloaded all of his films. And I was dating this girl at the time, and she was a little bit younger. I was about 25, maybe 26. She was 18, 19. So there's a little bit of an age difference there. And she's like, "What the hell's wrong with you? What are you doing? Why are we watching all this conspiracy stuff?" And I was like, "This is fascinating stuff. Did you know this about the Bilderberg? Did you know this about the CFR? Did you know this about the Masons? Did you know this about this, about that? Did you know this about 9/11? Did you know there were no planes? And, all this stuff and, everything like that." And one day she's like, "That's it. I'm out of here."
I was driving my partner crazy too at the time.
She's like, "This isn't what I signed up for." And but anyways, that's how I got into radio. And then one of the first people that we interviewed on Beyond the Veil was Brooks Agnew. And I was like, wow, we have Brooks Agnew on the radio here with us right now.
We've come full circle.
We've come full circle. And Brooks is one of the hosts over at TFR Live. TFRlive.com is the website, and he comes on every Sunday now at 5 p.m. Pacific time.
Oh, he's been on the network for many years now.
He's been on the network for years and years and years. And I just found it to be, very, very, very interesting that the beginning kind of came full circle. And in this picture here, I've lost some weight since this picture, and this is a horrible angle of me. This was back in 2019 before we moved to Vegas. So obviously there's been quite a bit of a transformation. Vegas has a tendency to rub off on you big time. Does. But here we are having dinner with none other than Brooks Agnew and his companion.
Yeah,
as well.
His lady friend.
Yes. And we're doing my favorite thing, which is Brazilian steak. So that was pretty interesting. But going back full circle to John Titor, I think we just got another
thank you so much,
super
Joker
chat too
Smiles.
from Joker Smiles. What's up,
Love
brother?
you,
Haven't seen you in a while. Oh, so nice.
He said, "Love to you both and everyone here. I got work in the morning, so I won't be able to listen to the whole stream, but I'm glad I can donate again."
Thank
love,
you
brother.
So
Thank
much,
you, Joker.
Thank you.
We love you.
That really raises the vibe. Thank you.
Yeah, it does.
So Art, George, all of them were big inspirations. And Mellow Ash, not to be confused with the non-Mellow Ash, with the Wild Ash, but Mellow Ash, thank you, keep on rocking. Much love to you.
Thank you. Keep on rocking me, babe.
Somebody said Ozzy just died. Ozzy Osbourne?
Ozzy Osbourne just died? No.
No, hopefully it's a death hoax, but...
It's not reporting it on Wikipedia yet, so I'm gonna categorize it as false. Now.
Maybe Ozzy is somebody's pet.
Oh, okay, maybe
it could be, but I just looked it up. Yeah, the only news I see about Ozzy Osbourne is that Zakk Wylde, his guitarist, isn't disappointed at all that he didn't appear on Ozzy's new album. If you did have a loss of an animal,
we are so sorry.
Yeah. But no, Ozzy is, from what I can tell,
Ozzy is fine.
He's good.
I think he's fine.
He's good.
Yeah.
I do have to wonder, though, has he lost his mind?
I think anybody that has had that many drugs and has had that many kind of nervous breakdowns over the course of their life and that many...
Do you think he can see, or is he blind?
I don't know.
Can he walk at all? Or if he moves, will he fall?
Is that from a song? Because I don't know Ozzy Osbourne's music. So I was sheltered from all that.
Is he alive or is he dead? Has he thoughts through his head. We'll just pass him there. Why should we even care?
He did not really eat a bat. He bit the head off of it and then spit it out. He didn't actually eat it.
Do you know, though, this is actually on topic, though, because, he was turned to steel in the great magnetic field.
Ooh, the magnetic
when he
field.
traveled time for the future of mankind.
Oh, that's really interesting. Lyrics right there. Those are really interesting lyrics.
All right, so I have a tendency to just go on and on and on and just go into all these tangent.
I have a list of predictions here.
I was going to get into that,
Yeah.
but let me preface it by saying this: that if this was one big elaborate hoax, then what happened is the guy sent a fax to Art Bell in 1994 or 1995 and said, "I'm John Titor. I'm from the future. I'm sending you this fax as proof." Then he went in the year 2000 and posted on Art Bell's forum. So this was a hoax that was planned for quite some time. But go ahead.
Yes, I think that I've got the first ones right here. So here are some of his predictions: that CERN would discover the basis for time travel in 2001. See, let me just give you a little bit of a backstory here. He claimed to be an American soldier from 2036, based in Tampa in Hillsborough County, Florida, who was assigned to a governmental time travel project. Purportedly, he'd been sent back to 1975 to retrieve an IBM 5100 computer, which he said was needed to debug various legacy computer programs in 2036, a reference to the Unix year 2038 problem. The 5100 runs the APL and BASIC programming languages. Titor had been selected for this mission specifically, given that his paternal grandfather was directly involved with the assembly and programming of the 5100. So he claimed to be on a stopover in the year 2000 for personal reasons, quote unquote personal reasons, i.e. to collect pictures lost in the future Civil War and visit his family, of whom he spoke often.
I thought it was hookers and blow.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only reason you would stay in the past. Titor also said he had been for a few months trying to alert anyone that would listen about the threat.
I think you muted yourself. Or I muted you.
Yeah, you muted me on accident. Of the threat of mad cow disease spread through beef products, and about the possibility of civil war within the United States. So he claimed that civil war would start in 2004. He never said that anything like 9/11 was going to happen. So I'm wondering if the same people that did 9/11 saw him doing this and said, "Oh, well, we have to pull the plug on some of these terror attacks and try a different tack and not follow this same line of thinking that we were on, and decided to do things differently." So instead of homegrown terrorism in 2004, we had false flag terrorism coming from the Islamic community in 2001. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And also his theory of time travel. And he posted schematics of his machine and all of that. But his theory of time travel is that there are multiple parallel universes. So you can never travel back to the original timeline where you came from, and that takes care of the grandfather paradox situation.
It does.
Where, you jump back, but you jump back to a timeline that is the closest to the timeline that you're trying to get to, but you can never get back to the original one.
Right.
We see all these Mandela effects and timeline shifts. And I think a lot of people are aware that we've shifted timelines multiple times, and we're probably in a tangent universe right now as we speak. So we're not in the same timeline or universe that we were back last November, or that we were, a few years ago, and even more so going back to 2012. I think there was something major in 2012. You remember when we met, and I was taking you to the reverse osmosis place, and the place was gone, and then we started noticing all these different anomalies. And I think when we were talking to Brooks the first time, which was like October, November of 2010, we asked him, we asked David Icke, we asked we asked every guest, have you noticed any kind of timeline anomalies where places will pop up or
that weren't there,
or events will happen differently?
Yeah.
Some of them would say, yeah, I've noticed it. Others would say, no, I haven't noticed anything like that at all. That's ridiculous. Now, this was about 5 years, 3 years maybe before the Mandela effect was coined as the Mandela effect. So we were noticing it, and we talked about it on some of our first shows.
Yeah, we talked about it on some of our first shows, and we went into great detail about how the Mandela effect works. We just didn't call it the Mandela effect because we didn't really have a whole lot of interest in apartheid in South Africa. I mean, it's a fascinating topic, but we weren't all that interested in it, and so we didn't see those anomalies until somebody pointed them out to us, and thus we never called it the Mandela effect. However, we were talking about the Berenstain Bears. We were talking about the about all these different Mandela effects before Mandela effect was even thought of.
Well, no. What I'm getting at is that we were noticing these timeline changes.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm
geographic
saying.
changes, event changes, before it was actually coined and put out in the general consciousness,
in the collective.
The Berenstain Bears. I remember who it was. I don't remember the name of the guy, but he did a show on TFR, and he was one of the hosts. And he's like, "Hey, have you heard of this Berenstain Bear stuff?" And I was like, no, I haven't. And I kind of blew it off at first because I was like, that's kind of silly, Berenstain. I didn't understand the significance of it. We did a top 5 Mandela effect video that I think was very well produced. And in that video, we actually show that we found the copyright, the trademark attorney, and on his printed literature, still to this day, it still says Berenstain instead of Berenstain. It was corrected on his website. And I showed that they corrected it on the website, but you go to the Wayback Machine and it says Berenstain.
It still says Berenstain.
On the Wayback Machine.
Yeah.
It's always been Berenstain. And then the big one was 80scartoons.net or something like that.
That was another big one, yeah.
And you go back to about the year 2002. And from the year 2002 onward, it changed from Berenstain to Berenstain.
That's right.
Or no, I'm sorry, the other way. From Berenstain to Berenstain. However, the URL itself is still 80scartoons.com/Berenstain Bears. So we put all this together in this Mandela effect video that we did. But we actually, we found evidence of Berenstain, and the trademark attorney, as I've said before, he would be the one. That's what he does
for a living.
Trademarks. He did not only Berenstain Bears, but he did a bunch. He did like G.I. Joe, and he did like Transformers, and he did a bunch of kids shows, and he was the trademark attorney. And you'd imagine if anybody spelled it right, it would be the trademark attorney himself.
Absolutely.
And they even corrected it on the website after the fact, because I think so many people were calling them and saying, hey, is this Berenstain or Berenstain? It says Berenstain on your website.
Yep. And they
crazy shit.
And you know what? It probably was some 20-year-old person that does data entry that was just answering the phone that day that just said, I don't know. Let me look it up. Oh, well, it says here it's Berenstain. So we need to change our website. But yeah, it's Berenstain. Okay. But I remember I worked at the public library when I was 10 years old, and I remember putting these books away, and they all said Berenstain. I remember it like it was yesterday, and it's like I have a photographic memory when it comes to words and how they're spelled. I can spell almost any word, can't I? And I remember this specifically being Berenstain. I showed this to my grandmother, and she said, "Oh, that's weird." And I was like, "What's weird?" And, just waiting for her to say it. And she said, "It's usually Berenstain, isn't it?" And I said, "Exactly." And she's like, "Well, is it or is it not?" I'm like,
this is where we're showing the Wayback Machine in this
video. It
video.
used to be, yeah.
I don't know how well you can see it on the screen, but yeah, Berenstain. See, it changes right there from, where was it? Actually, I'll just play this little bit of the video real quick. It's got to do with the topic. So let me just backtrack to this point here. All right, here we go.
Will be the Mandela effect.
Number 1, the Berenstain Bears. Many of us learn to read by reading the adventures of this family of bears. This is why so many people ran for their basements and attics when they realized the name was spelled with an A instead of an E. While this may seem trivial in and of itself, the most interesting part of this Mandela effect is the mountains of evidence showing Berenstain, not Berenstain. Taking a trip through the Wayback Machine for a website called 80scartoons.net, several entries can be found containing the name Berenstein in the episode list. Then suddenly, on August 5th, 2001, the names appear as Berenstain. That is, of course, except for the URL itself, which remains Berenstein to this day. But who better to defer to than Jonathan Reichman, the trademark attorney behind Spider-Man, Batman, Barbie, Babar the Elephant, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the Berenstein Bears.
Spelled Berenstein. It was spelled Berenstein.
So, what do you think of the Mandela effect? Has half the world been struck by...
That was a cute video.
That was a really...
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to make.
That was a lot of fun to
It
make.
just took a long time to make, so,
We need to make more of those. Well, we need to make more of those.
I
Because those
agree.
are a lot of fun to make, and they're very educational, and
Look,
they're easy to watch.
At the end here, when an individual is ready to see beyond the veil, he or she must first
like, comment, and subscribe.
Nelson Mandela.
That's great.
All right, so take us away. some
Yes.
more on
Okay.
the,
Like I said, he predicted a civil war in 2004, but it was going to be a case where I had it pulled up right here, and now it's here. It is. If you could change one thing about your government right now, what would it be? So his answer was, the United States is still a representative republic in 2036, but it was touch and go for a while. After the war, the U.S. Had divided into 5 general areas based on their economic and defensive strengths. Many people blamed the government organization for the war, and the last Constitutional Congress was held in 2020 to officially scrap the Constitution and start over. Fortunately, this exercise in anger pointed out how hard it was to come up with anything better. It was decided the document wasn't at fault. As a result, there have been a few small changes to the Constitution and the executive branch, but you would easily recognize it. The average citizen is more educated about the Constitution and aware of the rights and responsibilities it gives them. Federal power has been decentralized, and the focus of daily politics is in the state senates. Federal law has also been streamlined, but much harder to change or make additions to. The people who signed my paycheck told me why we needed a 5100 and sent me off to get one. I was not in a position to make alternate suggestions. As I recall, isn't the Cray a rather large system? We need something portable. The 5100 isn't required for its reliability. It's needed to translate between APL, Unix, and a few obscure IBM mainframe languages. The fishing is great, and you're more than welcome to join us, but the me here is only 3. I'll have to tell him you're coming. I don't know what that was about, but what do you think about that?
Well, you know, I find it very interesting. One of the predictions that he made, and I don't know if you got to that part yet. Actually, let's stick to this. You know, the United States is still a representative republic in 2036, but it was touch and go for a while. After the war, the U.S. had divided into 5 general areas based on their economic and defensive strengths. Obviously, that didn't happen, but many people blamed the government organization for the war, and the last Constitutional Congress was held in 2020 to officially scrap the Constitution and start over. It's interesting that he points to 2020. I mean, 2020 vision, obviously, you know. But many, many things happened in 2020. And what appears on the surface now, in my humble opinion, is not what actually is going on.
Right.
So he could be right to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. And what's actually going on hasn't been revealed to people yet.
Right.
So he didn't allude anything to Trump. He could have been Trump, though.
Ooh,
What if John Titor was Trump? I don't think that's the case. I'm just saying a dun-dun-dun thing, yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea.
A dun-dun-dun as opposed to da-da-da-da-da.
Da-da-da-da-da.
But seriously, though, it divided into 5 different areas. And what's funny is that I have been predicting a secession going back, in 2020. And it seems like that's what's happening right now. Texas is issuing arrest warrants for all those Democrats that fled the House over there and went to Washington, D.C. Florida, DeSantis is just tearing up the Biden administration like you've never seen. I mean, Biden did a speech and he said, we're trying to take care of this virus. If you're not going to stand with us, then get out of our way. And DeSantis gets up there and he's like, it's my job to stand in your way when you're trying to stomp on the constitutional rights of our people and you're trying to shut down small businesses and you're trying to do this and do that, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, wow.
That's impressive.
Yeah, from that video, it was a massive dump. Wow.
And everyone's trying to figure out where did it come from?
Fool's Gold. Thank you for the
thank you, Fool's Gold.
For the love. I don't see the super chat. Can you read it out? Because
yes.
Here it is. Good vibes, tribe peeps. We're in this together. Much love. Much love.
Much love
to
right
guys
back
and gals
to you
out there, and especially to you, brother. Thank you very much. So interesting points of 2020.
Yeah, it is interesting.
So please proceed with the chloroform.
Please proceed with the chlorophyll.
The chlorophyll.
Please proceed with the chlorophyll. Yes,
God, we're really showing our ages with our references.
Yeah, I know. We really are. We gotta tone it back.
All right.
Because some of these people were like 5 when that movie came out. So yes, I age and my hair and nails grow at normal rates. Please keep in mind that gravity distortion does involve some dilation effects, but jumping between world lines are time-like trips, not space-like trips. The air is about the same, although I do smell and taste industrial odors here my parents cannot. The food in the future is grown and raised naturally inside the community structure. So the food in the future is grown and raised naturally inside the community structure. This is done primarily for safety reasons. I am amazed at the risks people here are willing to take with processed food. All the food I eat here is grown and prepared by myself or my family. Unfortunately, I don't know if we are acquainted on my world line. Yes, love is a challenge. What's harder is knowing you could go back and correct a mistake, but at the cost of the you on that world line that you want to live your life over again on. The questions about the president and space travel are reasonable, but now we come to a conflict between physics and ethics. So somebody had asked him, is George W. Bush going to survive to see a second term, et cetera, et cetera. So this was his answer to it. The verse, the ethics. I've seen a television program about a man who is able to speak with the dead. When I watch the show, I'm more afraid about...
Hold on. I'm kind of lost in where you're at.
Oh, okay. I'm on page 18.
Oh, okay.
He's talking about the way that food is grown in the future.
Okay. We're skipping a little too fast.
Oh, are we skipping too fast?
Yeah. But you're on page 18. Okay, go ahead. Indeed, you are very convincing with your stories. Is that where you're at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't think he said anything else.
Okay.
Yeah, he's talking about the ethics of
telling
answering
people,
the question,
answering
about
the
presidents,
the future and stuff like that. But he did describe just a minute ago about how jumping from timeline to timeline, and it's not, you can't go back and forth from the same timeline, but you can jump from one timeline to another.
Right, exactly, and he's putting forward the dilemma of having a choice. You can go back and change something, but if you go back and change anything, then the future that you return to is not going to be the same future that you left. It's going to be very different.
That's very true. I remember in the timeline that we were on right before the show, I turned the AC on. Now, after we started the show, the AC's not on. So I'm going to go turn it on real quick.
Okay,
because it's hot as shit in here.
So and then he goes into the ethics of time travel and then divulging what is going to happen in the future to the regular layperson. He said, I've seen a television program about a man who's able to speak with the dead. When I watch the show, I'm more afraid about the possibility that what he is doing is real, not whether or not he is doing it. Since I will be leaving this world line in the next coming year, I could easily tell you that the president lives or dies in the next 4 years. In fact, I could probably find some way to even charge you for it. When the day comes for my prediction to be realized, it will either happen or not. If it does happen, then your ability to judge your environment is crippled by your acceptance of me as a knower of all things and gifted with the ability to tell the future. If I'm wrong, then everything I've said that might possibly have made you think about your world in a different way is suddenly discredited. I don't want either. Although I have personal reasons for being here and speaking with you, the most I could hope for is that you recognize the possibility of time travel as a reality. You're able to change your world line for better or worse just as I am. Although this will make me a far less interesting time traveler, though these are the rules I personally try to hold to. Number 1, I will not disclose any information that will cause someone to personally gain by its knowledge. This means no stock or sports tips. Number 2,
Yeah, you should have told us about Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucker.
Number 2, I will not disclose any detailed information that would allow someone to avoid death by probability. This means no earthquake or bomb information. Number 3, I will...
That's interesting because you never mentioned 9/11, and so...
Yeah, that's why. I guess that would be why.
But if you're pulling off a hoax, obviously you're going to want to...
Be as vague as possible.
Yep. So, yeah.
So it could be either or. I leave it to the audience to decide. Number 3, I will not disclose any information that may compromise any future actions by individual people or threaten their family and well-being. I will not disclose names or events associated with individuals. Now for the physics. The grandfather paradox is impossible. In fact, all paradox is impossible. The Everett-Wheeler-Graham or multiple world theory is correct. All possible quantum states, events, possibilities, and outcomes are real, eventual, and occurring. The chances of everything happening someplace at some time in the superverse is 100%. For all you scientists out there, if Schrodinger's cat had a time machine, he might not be in the box at all.
Yeah. Okay, so when you think about it from that perspective of multiple timelines, then yeah, you start with one singular event that spawns off into 2 different possibilities. Those 2 possibilities then spring off individual timelines themselves because each possibility happens in one universe and the other possibility happens in the other. Then those spring off and spring off and spring off and spring off and create a giant web of fuckery, which we have found ourselves in 2021. The question is, how do we go back to the timeline where it's the most optimal, unless we are on the most optimal timeline. However, I do have to ponder the question, have we started to break this process down to a point of singularity again? Because what goes up must come down. What expands must respan.
What must contract.
What
expands must contract.
Must contract. Yeah. Respan sounds better though.
Yeah, respan.
Respans. Unspans.
So
I like to make up my own,
Yeah, make up your own words.
I don't like to follow the rules, They say that it's contracts. I'm like, no. I'm
just don't follow your own rules.
Doing my own. Yeah, I'm going to follow my own rules.
I don't follow anyone's rules, not even my own. So he goes into the physics of time travel a little bit more, if you don't mind me covering this real quick. He said, therefore, there is a world line where you are alive and another world line where you have gone back in time to kill your relative, and the you on the new world line won't be born, but you, the killer, is still running around there. Differences between world lines are measured from the perspective of the time traveler in terms of divergence percentage. The higher the divergence, the more unlike your destination world line looks like compared to your world line of origin.
Which is pretty interesting because it reminds me of that CIA document that we covered where they were talking about timelines and they were talking about how they know that everything we talk about here on Beyond the Veil is completely real, and they know this. They just want the sheep out there to not know it because they can manipulate reality through manipulating the collective consciousness. Now, of course, it was much more detailed than that. It took us about 4.5 hours, maybe 5, to cover the full document. But, I'm getting my point across. But my point of saying all of this is that they know that timelines can be manipulated. They know all of this, and it's all in the CIA documents. So it was talking about how when you want to manifest reality, if you want to manifest something that is far away from this timeline, it's going to take that much more time for it to process. So they want to manifest something through the collective consciousness. They call it sending it out into the universe and then bringing it back. So if you want to manifest Godzilla tearing down New York City, that's so far divergent from the reality that we have now. It may happen, but it may take tens of thousands of years for it to happen. Whereas if you want to shift reality just a tiny little bit, it's much easier for them to shift the consciousness a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, because it's jumping from one timeline to another, to another, and they're able to do this through their technology and mass manipulation of consciousness. And so, therefore, he's saying pretty much the same thing that was disclosed by the CIA in 2018. I think it was when we covered that document. He's describing the exact same premise that came out of CIA.gov.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that they covered this years after this random guy on Art Bell's forum is posting about this, and then several years later, it comes out that the CIA has known about this for years and that they've been involved with all this esoteric knowledge building activity, when at the same time, the left hand of the CIA was also doing mind control experimentation. So you've got the right hand doing this, the left hand is doing mind control, and they're both working in conjunction with each other to try to take over the consciousness of humanity, starting back in the 50s.
In my opinion, realistically, it has always been the case. When you look at religion and how they would say witchcraft, tarot reading, astrology, all of that is the work of the devil.
Yep.
Shamanism, psychedelic plants, these kind of out-of-body experiences, even meditation. Things like that. They've always demonized, and they've always tried to make it sound kooky, ridiculous, and completely baseless. I was just talking to Lucky earlier today, and I was like, was it Lucky or was it you?
It was Lucky.
I was talking to somebody today.
It was Lucky.
And I was like, I am so fucking pissed off. I'm reading all these fucking articles here. Yeah, I think
all
I was
these
talking
news articles.
all these news articles, and every single one says Trump made these baseless claims, and people are making these ridiculous and it's
crackpot
conspiracies. And it's like, why do you have to load everything up with all these emotional, appeal to emotions?
Loaded terminology.
Loaded terms. All loaded terms. And that's all I see in every freaking article, and it pisses me off. But I had a point to that, but anyways, it's all loaded terms.
It's all just loaded terminology that's meant to get an emotional reaction out of you.
Yeah.
And that's all it's meant to do. It's not meant to make you think. It's not meant to. It's meant to make you do the opposite of think, which is get emotional and get upset. When you're emotional, upset, you're not thinking clearly. I
remember my point. My point is that they've done this with all the esoteric stuff, like what we talk about here on Beyond the Veil, because they want to keep that knowledge to themselves. They don't want people utilizing that. And I think that's always been the case. So we're seeing it all the way up and down the line. Even the idea of timeline shifts, what did he call it? The superverse?
The superverse.
The superverse, yeah. The idea of superverse, multiverses, all that stuff. It's real. It's all real.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell you why, in my opinion, why I believe it's real. Like the reason of why I believe it's real is because we're inside of a machine. So inside of a computer system, this is the way the circuitry inside it and the programming and scripts work inside of the matrix itself.
Right.
These things are possible because we are inside of a computer simulation.
And it doesn't happen based on time. It happens based on sequences. What happens in the next sequence? When you are with somebody, let's just say me and Chris go out on a date together. We go to the Brazilian steakhouse to have dinner. When we arrive, we know what's going to happen from 1 minute to the next, not because it's 7:05, so that means that this is going to happen now. It means we have been seated now, so now they bring the water, they bring the little cheese biscuit things, and we go get our salad.
That is very true.
It's sequences.
Unless an anomaly comes in. If an anomaly comes in,
that's a curveball.
Like Foto de Chao gets bought out by a U.S. company, then we go and we expect a certain level of service and quality and find out that it's garbage.
Well, and then we find a different one, just like we found a different timeline.
We found a different restaurant.
Yep.
that used to be owned by the same people that owned Fogo before it was bought out, that do it the same people that owned Fogo before it was bought out, that do it the way Fogo is supposed to do it. So we jumped back to that other Brazilian restaurant that's actually doing it the way that it's supposed to. Now, if we can just jump back to the timeline where Orange Man is back at the helm of everything and gas is still $1 a gallon, $1.50 a gallon, I think we'll be good.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I had to fill the car up with gas today. Oh my God.
Oh, it's almost $5.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like $70.
And people are loving it. They're like, oh yeah, give me that.
Well, yeah,
give me that $5 a gallon gas. No, as long as I don't have to read mean tweets in the middle of the night. Oh yeah.
So I'm trying to get to the parts where John Titor's actually talking, because a lot of this is other people asking him questions.
Okay.
And being rude and being belligerent and, calling him out.
Just being internet people.
Yeah, just being internet people. They haven't changed in the last 20 years. It's been 20 years since these posts were put up on the internet. 20 years. So he said, I don't know any other way to tell you that I'm unaware of what happens in the next week, especially in Hollywood. Just curious.
Can you tell me real quick what page you're on? Because I'm
on page 23.
If the Egyptians knew the Red Sea were going to drown them, do you think they would have pursued Moses?
He's talking about the ethics of time travel and divulging the information.
Well, I just saw Egypt and it stuck
out.
So.
Yeah, it's interesting how he brings up Egypt.
Okay.
I fail to understand why my words generate so much conflict. I think it's far better for you to consider what I say as fantasy, so there is no question of credibility. How is my credibility going to affect your life? That's a good point.
We might be doing shows about it in 2021.
That's true. I don't want you to believe me, and it doesn't affect me in the least if you did. I don't know any other way to tell you that I'm unaware of what happens in the next week, especially in Hollywood. Just curious. That's a common question. Why do you think I would know something about that? Yes, it's very possible that what I say would spin your future off into a different direction.
Everybody knows that you can't travel through time without a damn almanac.
Yep.
So
you have to have your Gray's.
You have to have your Gray's almanac. Sports almanac. The Grays. The fucking Grays.
Who did show up while we were in Egypt, because we had such a good firewall going when we went to Egypt that they didn't even know that we were gone. I think they thought we were still at the house because they showed up. We have them on tape. That was so creepy.
See, look. Gray's Sports Almanac.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That'd be interesting.
We won't get into that now, but there's a lot of Back to the Future references, like Twin Peaks Mall.
Twin Peaks.
In the other timeline, it turns into Lone Peaks Mall because he goes back in time and it's Twin Trees or something like that. I don't remember what it was.
No, I know. Yeah, you're right. It's like Twin Trees or something. It was two trees.
Twin Pines.
That's right.
And it turns into one pine. Just like the World Trade Center
was two. Now it's one.
When they travel back in time, the clock says 9/11. So many things going on.
Oh, there's so much going on in that movie, which is why it's interesting that he doesn't even mention anything about 9/11. I mean, he wouldn't even have to say that much about it. He could just say, hey, there's going to be a big terror attack in 2001. I can't tell you where, but it's going to be in the United States.
Yeah, people are asking for a music break.
You could have just said that.
You want to do a music break?
Yeah, let's take a music break real quick.
Let's take a music break, break it up a little bit. All right, what do we have? We have a new one by Remix Bros here.
Oh yeah, that one's good.
Yeah, one of the latest here. So yeah, let's do this real quick, kind of break it up a little bit. We'll get into the Trump timeline stuff, Trump time traveler stuff too.
Yeah.
And while we're doing this music break, maybe you can skim through and highlight some stuff from the John Titor stuff too.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on.
Cool. Scratch. So anyways, let's proceed with the chlorophyll.
Proceed with the chlorophyll. So he's talking about the printing technology in 2036. He said, as for the printing technology in 2036, you may be surprised at how many people use typewriters. However, I agree the documents were probably not created that way.
So I don't know.
I don't see that happening
Unless there's some kind of event.
Yeah, unless there's some kind of
that
event that makes people
takes us back to the Stone Age.
Yeah.
And we're having to use typewriters again. But I
Right.
just don't see that.
I don't see that happening either. Unless, and this is a very big unless, it gets to the point where that civil war he was talking about makes it all but impossible to be secure while writing anything, even in Microsoft Word or anything like that. If you have thoughts that go against the state, you do not express them in a digital form, unless it's a typewriter that's not connected to the internet.
That's a good point.
That's the only way to stay secure.
The suppression of free speech right now. We're seeing everything monitored, every conversation, every call, everything's being recorded. It's a creepy time, and they're talking about censoring text messages, invading into your phone calls, and this is now openly admitted. So yeah, we might go back to the printing press before 2036.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about doing that because there was even an episode of Scandal where there was a writer, a female writer, and she would write about really secretive stuff. So she would always write it on a typewriter. And the guy he's like former CIA, he's like, yeah, that's the best way to do it. If you use a single typewriter to write a book, no one's getting a hold of that book ever. The only person that has that book is you, and you can ensure that by using a typewriter. And so that makes a lot of sense.
We might be going back to just pure text.
Yeah, exactly. So 2036. You are so fucked.
That is literally text.
2036.
No, look, that's literally text.
You remind me of the 16-year-old boys whenever I was in high school. That's what they would do.
It's just text. If YouTube bans it, that's just text. It's literally just text. All right.
2036 sounds more like 1836 with all the good stuff of modern life thrown in. Personally, I prefer our current timeline, even with all its excess and decadency. It's an exciting time to be alive, and I can still multiply and divide in my head. That was posted by another person, Lee Heggie, on January 29th, 2001. So he said, okay, although the documents posted were printed from a computer printer, is it really that hard to believe that manual typing is just a bit more common in 30 years? After the war, many things like manual printing machines, bicycles, sailboats, and hand tools were valued a great deal. I've noticed more people in California are installing wood-burning stoves. I realize
That's because the freaking price of fucking electricity is so high.
Exactly. But what if that's the point that he was making? Like, electricity is way too expensive to live any other way, and you are going to be monitored if you use an actual computer. So no, you really shouldn't. I realize my claims are a bit ridiculous, but my intent is not really to be believed. However, if I had an opportunity to talk to a time traveler, I might ask questions like, how exactly does a singularity sensor measure the expansion of the inner event horizon? Or why does the reality of multiple worlds support the religious dogma that there are no good or bad people, just good and bad decisions? Or what were the political motivations that changed the U.S. Constitution? So he has a good point there. If you were able to talk to a time traveler, you wouldn't ask them if the president of the United States was going to still be alive in 4 years. You would ask them about these things, because these things are going to indicate whether or not he's even telling the truth. Because if he knows a lot about these subjects and can converse with a physicist about them, I'm more likely to believe him. If he can't, then I'm likely to not believe him. He indicated that he was pretty much willing to explain all of this.
Typewriters, Alyssa, because she's always plugging iLife for us, always. She's our number one iLife fan, in my opinion. She asked, I wonder how much old school typewriters would cost. About $100 to $200.
About $200. Yeah. Yeah, an old manual typewriter.
Maybe hold on to them. They might be worth more later.
Yeah, they might be worth a fortune later. Because the little parts that go inside of these machines are very, very difficult to replace, or they're getting more and more difficult to replace because, number one, they're not making them anymore. I think there's a few companies that still make manual typewriters, but I think they're few and far between. And number two, the because of that, the parts are out of date and very difficult to find. And so I would imagine that these typewriters are going to go for $400, $500 in the next few years.
Yeah, I didn't realize when I opened this document up, this document is actually 500 pages.
Yeah, this is a huge document.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be able to get through even half of it.
Yeah, no, we don't need to. You can scroll through. I'm scrolling through and just looking for some interesting parts. But
Okay,
continue,
so
please.
he said, in my experience, when it becomes necessary to convince someone that what I do for a living, the only way to do that is to be related to them. Everything else is immediately written off as a parlor trick, even if they're standing in front of a cooling distortion unit and I show them a dollar bill with the year 2029 on it. In the last few months, I have had numerous extended conversations online, and there are quite a few things I've said which can easily be checked out but haven't been. I get no pleasure out of being right when it comes to CJD, which is mad cow disease, war in the Middle East, or suffering people in faraway lands. There's nothing like the look on someone's face when you tell them 100,000 people will be dead tomorrow. In my travels, I've discovered that most people really don't want to know about the future, because if it's different than what they want, it ticks them off. Actually, I don't blame them. The means by which I travel in time is very physical. I require a machine to do it. It weighs about 500 pounds and gets quite hot. I don't own it, and I did not build it. Within limits, I will be happy to discuss how it works and how future science thinks time works. No, we have not completed string theory yet, but N10 seems to work pretty well. As far as the future goes, your world line is about 2.5% different than mine. This is a roughly cumulative measurement based on my arrival in 1975. As far as I can tell right now, you are headed toward the same events I would call my history in 2036. However, the very nature of time travel states that every world line is unique, and you are very much in control of what you do and how you get there. Heck, the fact that I'm here makes it different from mine. I have nothing to sell, and there's nothing I want anyone to do. For all other time travelers out there, I have no tests for you, and I would enjoy discussing your feelings and experiences after the war. To everyone else, while I'm here, I'm very interested in your philosophy, religious outlooks, and speculations on technology.
This sounds like a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a good question. Yeah.
Ah, the war. Now that's interesting. It's worth mentioning the visions I observed. This or similar respect. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Now, as to answer my previous post.
I simply placed a task there that, if done, would not alter my timeline, but for sure answer one thing. I believe in the reality of alien technology, as I was one of several verifiable people to observe the same occurrence. I believe in astral/spiritual travel as a person who has done so and spoken to others of the same. I believe in the potential of time travel, but have not received anything that would make me properly convinced yet. I think this is somebody else. Yeah, this is posted by Kevin Spooner.
Okay. I sent you an article
Yeah.
that kind of breaks everything down.
Okay.
I didn't realize this document was
Was it?
this long.
Yeah. Was
I mean,
it
he
the John
posted
Titor,
a
the time
lot.
traveler story and predictions?
Yeah. And I was hoping to go over something similar to that.
Oh, okay.
But you know what I would like to do is, now that we have this full document, and you can get this full document by typing John Titor posts PDF, and it'll bring you up the full document. As a matter of fact, I can post it in the description of the show as well. But I'm going to go through this word for word and write everything out, and then maybe we'll do another show about it.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing that I found to be quite interesting is he got a lot of predictions wrong. But the one thing that he said that stuck out to me is that in the future, people make their own TV shows. And they don't really watch regular TV. It's mostly people creating their own content.
Mm-hmm.
And Cherie and I, this is how this all came about, is we were talking about media, we were talking about entertainment, and we were talking about how Hollywood, mainstream media, and traditional television is basically dead. And that it's all about people creating content, and they'd rather see each other than they'd rather overwatching a Hollywood production or something like that. I mean, there's some good Hollywood productions out there. But when I sit down and watch something, I watch something made by a regular person. And I appreciate that so much more than a Hollywood presentation. So, and I think a lot of people are moving towards that. And he pointed that out as one of the big things in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And after 2020, literally all the mainstream media ratings just sank. I mean, they lost about 75-80% of their audience.
All of them.
Yeah, all of them. All the major networks out there. Radio's pretty much dead.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people listen to radio. I think it's only the older people that do. And people are moving more and more towards creating their own and getting their voices out there, which was a beautiful thing up until all the censorship started happening. And, they're trying to destroy. I mean, the censorship, it's not just censoring the truth. It's censoring the very essence of what mankind is. We are expressing ourselves in ways that we've never been able to express ourselves before. But we saw this coming way back in 2000. The internet was completely and totally free back then. And you could say whatever you want, all that. And the mainstream media talking points back then, for those of you that remember, is, oh, you must have read that on the internet. You must have read that, as if the internet was nothing but a bunch of just bad information.
It's just a bunch of baloney.
And as the mainstream media started putting their own content on the internet, I started thinking to myself, well, they're actually saying that their own content is a bunch of BS because their content's on the internet as well.
Right.
So then they couldn't maintain that narrative anymore because more and more people were losing faith in them. And I mean, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, you can't get fooled again. That's a famous saying by George Bush. But my point is that people have lost credibility, or the mainstream media has lost credibility, and people have lost faith in what they see on TV. And they want to get out there and they want to speak their truths. And so they started to lose a grip, and they have lost a grip on the consciousness of the masses out there. And so now they're struggling and clutching at straws, trying to regain that. We saw Parler go down, all that. And it all happened right now in 2020, right underneath our noses, literally right in our faces with these masks.
Mm-hmm. Well, literally in our faces with these masks. I mean, I walked into a gas station yesterday because my car was completely empty, and I didn't even step more than 2 feet in the door and had the mask around my arm, and I'm walking with a cane, and I can't put my mask on while I'm using the cane. I need something to kind of stand up against, and this lady's like yelling at me, put your mask on, put your mask on, put your mask on. It's like, oh my God.
Mask. Didn't somebody stop you at one of the casinos?
Yes.
And so that's not a real mask.
Yes. I go and play at the casino whenever I'm stressed out or I'm hurting or I just need to get away for a few minutes. And I was playing at this Monopoly game it's like our game whenever we go. And whenever I walked there's like a little lobby area by the parking lot, and this person tells me, I guess it was a security guard or somebody, and he tells me, you need to put your mask on. And I said, I've got my mask on. And I pulled it up because I had it down while I was
It was
using
the
my
invisible
e-cigarette.
masks.
It was those invisible masks that we have. I think we might have one up here. I'm not sure, but they look like nothing. But they're called fake masks because they look like nothing, but they really are masks.
They work just as well as
they work just as well as any other mask.
Yeah.
And he even had to admit this. Like he said, "Let me see that. What is that?" And I said, "It's a mask." And he's like, "No, that's not a mask." And he grabbed it like this, and he held the end of it like he was inspecting it like that. And he's like, I don't know if that's a mask. And I was like, "That's a mask. You can check anywhere in the entire country. That's a mask. That's considered a mask. It's a piece of cloth over my face." He's like, "Well, you have to keep your mask on when you're in this area. You can't be using your e-cigarette."
Well, the good thing about those masks is you can actually use your e-cigarette through that mask.
Yes, you can. Yeah, I realized that
Yeah.
later. You can even use your e-cigarette through it.
Somebody had mentioned that they sell them in bulk. So I was going to buy some and put them on ialife.com.
Oh, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and we'll use our
That is a
fulfillment
great
center to get it
idea.
out there, and we'll get it out there cheaper than
Yeah.
what we're buying them for.
Right.
Because if we can buy them in bulk, we can get them at a great price. And I know these guys are marking their masks up.
Yeah,
big
they are.
time.
Big time.
And the
They
thing
have to
is,
be.
we would be offering them on iAlife as just kind of like a bonus, not
Yeah.
something to make money off of.
Right.
So we can probably offer our iAlife people the same masks for next to nothing.
Yeah. Oh,
I'll
yeah.
look into that.
Yeah,
into
we
that.
need to look into that because
Yeah.
that would be a great thing to do because so many people love these masks because they're an answer back to the sheeple that are enforcing all of this and getting their little power trips from it. So this guy, he goes on to state, you can't use your e-cigarette when you're in this lobby area. Anything on the carpet is you can't use your e-cigarette here. You have to use it on the hard floor when you get past this area. And I said, why? Because COVID spreads more when there's carpet. And he almost laughed. I almost got him laughing, but he's like, no, there's a high traffic area, because I was laughing at him at that point. I was laughing in his face, and he was like talking over me. You know how people do whenever they're mad that you just called them out on something totally ridiculous they just said. He goes, well, this is a high traffic area, and I'm like, I get it. Yeah, but that's just a funny anecdote.
Yeah.
So
She's pretty quick.
Like
like that.
COVID spreads more when there's carpet.
Yep.
I mean, I've heard it all.
I got a lot of compliments on the mask today.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
It's made you feel really good.
It did. I did a little video about it earlier.
Uh-huh.
That wasn't the purpose of the video. The video was to say thank
Yeah,
you
to
to our
thank you
BTV
for our
tribe
bit-
for
yeah.
all their feedback on the other thing. But yeah.
Yeah, and everything worked out really great as far as that's concerned. I think, you've got a little bit of soreness today, but it's nothing like it was yesterday.
I am surprised. I was skeptical about dental implants, but I got a good price on them. And
Yeah, you did.
They put a fixed temporary on there.
Mm-hmm.
I've never even heard of this before.
Yeah, me either.
I feel it. It's strong.
It is strong.
Yeah.
It's as strong. I mean, it seems just as strong as your regular teeth.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Good job. Yeah.
So, do you want me to
let's
go over any
this-
more of this John Titor information?
No, let's go over this article real quick, because I think this breaks down a little bit more, and it breaks it down in a more concise manner. It's got prediction failures in there. It's also got, several things that we can touch upon.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a 100% debunking article or not, but it's a more condensed version of everything we were going over.
Yeah, exactly. So, the predictions. As with many alleged time travelers from the future. Oh, you're looking at that one. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I sent that to you in Skype.
Okay, so do you want me to start?
Or do you have a different one? Do you have a better one?
I don't know if it's a better one. I don't.
Okay.
This might be better.
I wish there was just a list of
Yeah,
all
a
his
list of his
predictions. That's what I was
predictions.
looking for. Just
That's
a list
all
of all
we
his
need.
predictions, so we can go through and say, okay, this happened, this didn't
I thought
happen.
I
This,
had something like that here, but this isn't my original computer. My computer broke.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we had this weird thing go on. You probably saw the video. Her computer went out exact same day TFR servers got hacked.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to our tech support, and there are developers. Their computer gets hacked literally on the spot as I'm talking to them. We found the malicious code within TFR. We found the malicious code on our servers. It all happened all at the same time. My desktop computer has been begging me, update. We want you to update now. And I'm like, I'm not updating. No. You want to send that freaking Stuxnet virus into my computer.
Stuxnet.
Stuxnet, yeah.
Yep. So I can go over that article that you have already up, but I've already read a lot of that, and I've gotten to the time machine part.
Okay.
So scroll down to time machine. So he goes into the time machine. Titor described the time machine on several occasions. In an early post, he described it as a stationary mass temporal displacement unit powered by two topspin dual positive singularities, producing a standard offset Tipler sinusoid. Some of this sounds really familiar. Does it sound familiar to you? a stationary mass temporal displacement unit powered by 2 top-spin dual positive singularities, producing a standard offset Tipler sinusoid.
It sounds like something out of Star Trek.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
The earliest post was more explicit, saying it contained the following: 2 magnetic housing units for the dual microsingularities, an electron injection manifold to alter mass and gravity microsingularities, a cooling and X-ray venting system, gravity sensors or a variable gravity lock, 4 main cesium clocks, and 3 main computer units. According to the post, the device was installed in the rear of a 1967 Chevy Corvette convertible. It has to be a convertible.
Well, you got to ride in style.
Well, yeah.
It can't be a DeLorean.
It can't be a DeLorean.
That'd be too close to Back to the Future.
Yeah, that would be lame. And later moved to a 1987 truck having a 4-wheel drive. Titor also shared several scans of the manual of a C-204 time displacement unit with diagrams and schematics. He also shared some photographs of the device installed in the car. Titor further claimed that the Everett Wheeler model of quantum physics was correct. This model, better known as the many worlds interpretation, posits that every possible outcome of a quantum decision actually occurs in a separate universe. Titor stated that this was the reason for that the grandfather paradox would not occur. Following the logic of the argument, Titor would be killing a different John Titor's grandfather in a timeline other than his own. The grandfather paradox is impossible. In fact, all paradox is impossible, and I already said that. So predictions. Although invoking the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, whereby events from his own timeline may differ from our own, Titor also expressed assurance that the differences were minimal. As such, his descriptions have been interpreted as predictions and compared with historical events since 2001. The most immediate of Titor's predictions was of an upcoming civil war in the United States, having to do with order and rights. He described it as beginning in 2004, with civil unrest surrounding the presidential election of that year. The civil conflict that he characterizes as having a Waco-type event every month that steadily gets worse will be pretty much at everyone's doorstep and erupts by 2008.
So let's pause right there for a second. So 2008, that was Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Leading into that, there wasn't a Waco type event, but there were many, many, many mass shootings in rapid succession. And as I've said before, this all came on the cusp of the UN gun bill that they were trying to pass. So we were in Colorado at the time. Operation Mountain Guardian was being run, and they were doing simulations of movie theater shootings and school shootings. Then in the fall of that year, we had the Batman shooting, we had Sandy Hook, we had several other things. And consequently enough, I don't know if people know this, but on the same day of Sandy Hook, there was a school in Japan where somebody went in to a preschool
With a butcher knife.
And started knifing up a bunch of kids. How coincidental is that you had pretty much the exact same event happen on the other side of the world at the exact same day, just different? And while that event, if real, was a very big tragedy, I think it just goes to show that a ban on guns wouldn't have prevented a psycho from going into a school and knifing up kids.
Yeah, killing a bunch of kids.
I mean, you know, psychos are going to do what psychos do. It doesn't matter whether you ban the guns or not. So, you know, we haven't gotten to that point yet. But with this administration that we're at now, I could see it moving into very totalitarian directions and gun bans and all kinds of stuff because they're already openly doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, Awake with JP did a video just recently where he's like, Biden administration, you know, we know the whole totalitarian thing that you're trying to do, you know, and all that, but, you know, you probably shouldn't be so open about it. You know, up to this point, it's always been done in secret, but you just can't come out and just say it because people are going to get mad when you just come out and say that Facebook, that the White House is working with Facebook to censor misinformation. That's a violation of the First Amendment. And so when you're doing it in secret, it's one thing. When you're doing it out in the open, it's a whole nother. But they are doing it out in the open, which is scary. Not scary as in, oh, I'm scared, but scary as in, like, you know, shocking scary. Because up to this point, yeah, they were doing it, but they were doing it in secret. Now they're so brazen about it, in your face about it, and they're like, yeah, we just simply don't care.
Yeah.
And if you don't
have
mind
any
me
rights.
going off in a tangent for a second about the whole
Please do.
sovereign citizen thing, remember the sovereign citizens are like, you've got to file this paperwork here, you've got to file this paperwork, you've got to file this paperwork, and all this. And I'm thinking to myself, these people are lawless. They don't care about the law. Even if they're 100% right in their analysis, the sovereign citizens, these people don't care. They're criminals and they have guns. So if you get pulled over by a jackboot and you try the sovereign citizen stuff, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about any of that. He's got a gun and he's going to pull you out of the car, and we've seen video after video after video of that happening. And this, in my opinion, was the difference between Trump and Biden, or Trump and the cabal, because it's really not Biden. Biden is just a puppet. Trump knew the bounds of the Constitution, and he stuck to those bounds. The cabal knows the bounds of the Constitution, but they don't care about it. So I'm glad we have people like DeSantis and Abbott and several other governors who are standing up against this, which goes right back to the prediction of the Civil War. And if you really think about it, from 2004 to now, we have had kind of a civil war.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fought in the way that the first Civil War was fought, but there is a war within the United States. We saw that at its peak, in my opinion, in 2020, when we saw BLM and Antifa running around destroying businesses and cities and all of that. So we're definitely in a civil war right now. It's just not fought in the way that you would imagine a civil war would be fought.
A traditional war.
Yeah.
It's not fought traditionally.
And we're even watching secession happening right now, but it's not traditional.
Mm-hmm.
It's the governor standing up like DeSantis and Abbott saying, no, we're not going to do this. Lawsuits, stuff like that. But this is how this starts. It starts with, hey, we're going to try to take care of this in the legal way. We're going to try to take care of this through the courts. And then at some point, it's going to come to shove, and they're going to say, okay, that's it. We no longer recognize the federal government. I have heard, and I haven't been able to verify, but I've heard that there's like 110 or 120 countries that don't recognize this administration as legitimate. Now, you guys and gals, let me know in the chat if that's accurate or not, but this is what I've heard through the grapevine. I haven't confirmed it, but if that's the case, everybody's looking at us right now like we are the laughing stock of the world.
Oh, yeah.
And
This is
meanwhile,
embarrassing.
our people in Australia, our BTV tribe, they're under major attack. They're under military lockdown. There's stuff going on in Australia that is just unbelievable, not reported here in the mainstream media, not reported in the United States. Meanwhile, the reports that they're getting in Australia and in the UK is that everything is hunky-dory here in the United States, and this administration has freed us from the totalitarianism and racism of the Trump administration, and that we're all singing Kumbaya fucking ya over here. It's bizarro world that we're living in.
It's a circus, and I mean that in the very rawest sense of the term. A circus wasn't always what we see now as a circus and what we think of as a circus. The circus was originally part of the Roman Empire. It was part of the games that they would play, and the circus was actually what they would have different shows, and during these shows, people would get killed and people would get eaten by lions, and that would be the circus. Yeah. And when you'd go for bread and circuses,
that's what I was just about to say. Bread and circuses. Yeah.
And so, yes, this has turned into a circus in that the only people that this is working for are the ones at the very top of one party of the United States. It's like not even 2% of the population. It's maybe 1% of the population that benefits from this administration being the administration. The rest of the world is being told that we're all happy, we're all singing Kumbaya over here, whereas we're complaining every 5 minutes about the gas prices, the electricity prices, the prices of everything going up.
Real estate has gone up 26% on average, 40% in some places.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And then food has gone up at least 30%.
Food has gone up
at least.
Yeah. Do you know why? it's several different reasons, but Trump was doing the pipelines. Trump was creating energy independence.
Yes,
and
he
what we have
was.
to do is we have to go to OPEC, and we have to ask OPEC to produce more oil. And OPEC purposely produces
Less oil
than is
what we
needed
need,
in order
yeah.
to artificially inflate the prices. It's like the Federal Reserve, the way that they caused the Depression. What they did is, first of all, they went around and they recalled all the stocks, because you had like these options where you can own the stock for 10% of its value, but the clause was that if it ever got recalled, you had to pay it back immediately. Most people didn't have the money to pay back the stock, and so what happened is the stocks wound up getting all recalled. That crashed the stock market. And then the Federal Reserve, rather than putting more money into the money supply, they pulled money out of the money supply and created the Depression. It's the exact same thing that's happening right now. And all these spending bills, trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars, that are not going into the U.S. economy. They're going all over the world, and it's tanking the value of the dollar. They're raising the minimum wage in several places, forcing small businesses to go out of business because they can't sustain themselves. After this draconian lockdown orders and everything that's gone on, people are losing their jobs, people are losing their houses, the prices of everything are going up. I mean, I don't have to tell you things are bad. We know things are bad. It's worse than bad. It's depression. Everybody's out of work.
Or scared of losing their jobs. A dollar buys a nickel's worth.
Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers are keeping a gun under the counter. All right, sorry.
So Patrice had an interesting comment in the chat. You guys experience prices now that loads of countries do for decades because of America ruling the prices.
That is true, and I understand that.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of a different dynamic, though. Here in the States, you have to have a car.
Yeah.
In other countries, especially around Europe, a car is nice, but there's so much public transportation that when I was over there, public transportation, even for people that had cars, were the preferred method of travel. New York City, for example, is an example of here in the United States where public transportation is preferred over taking a vehicle because of the limited amount of parking and stuff like that.
And the gas prices are higher.
There's
there.
less. Yeah, there's less need for a vehicle and less need for gasoline in some other countries. And in some countries there's a big need, and they're paying outrageous amounts of fuel. But maybe you're right. Maybe this is affecting not only the U.S. economy, but it's affecting the world economy as well. And it's a travesty. It's a travesty. There are some liberal principles that I agree with. Nobody should be without health care. Nobody should be without a house. Nobody should be without food. We have more than enough resources to allocate to ensure that everybody's hungry, everybody's sheltered, and everybody's taken care of. The problem is the people that want to implement all these things and they're promising all these things, they have nefarious purposes for doing so. Universal health care, for example. You have to have every single jab. You have to have every single procedure. You have to have everything that they say you have to have. Otherwise, when it comes time for you to have whatever you need, whether it be a cancer treatment or a surgery or something like that, they can say, well, you didn't comply with this, and so therefore we're not going to authorize this. Likewise, you have the whole idea of death panels, which is, well, this person is too old to have this procedure, so they're going to go on a waiting list until they die. And they pick and choose who lives and who dies. Even in Greece, when we were over there, the majority of people that we spoke to had private health insurance, even though you have socialist health insurance over there. And the hospitals over there are horrible. You go to a private doctor, you walk right in. You go to the hospitals, it's like a third world country.
Yeah, you wait 12, 13, 14 hours.
Yeah. And that's the problem here in the United States with Medicaid for All, is that you don't have a choice. I think Medicaid should be more available all across the board in all 50 states, but you should also have the option for private health insurance as well. When they say Medicaid for all and universal health care, they're talking about removing private health insurance and forcing everybody to be on Medicaid, and therefore removing the choice of what goes into their bodies.
Right.
And we're watching the camel's nose under the tent right now with this whole jab that they're talking about right now and the mandatory nature of it. And it's a very, 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 I don't like to use the word scared or fear. It's a very concerning time that we're living in for the entire world, not just for the United States. Obviously, we're going to be United States centric because we live here.
Yeah.
If we lived somewhere else, we would be
That centric.
that centric, yeah. But what's going on in Australia, though, is horrifying.
Yeah.
There is something in Australia. I haven't been able to figure it out. We have Pine Gap out there.
We need to go out there.
Which is a huge military base that I think houses a big part of this artificial intelligence. But there is something going on in Australia that they are trying to hide with all these draconian lockdowns and all of this. Somebody was criticizing me for calling Australia a small island. And what I meant by that, just to clarify, is I meant more isolated rather than small. I used the word small, but I was actually talking about isolated, as in there's no landmass around it. So sure, it's the size of the United States. And somebody had pointed this out on my Facebook and put Australia on top of the United States. My question is, what map are they using? Are they using the Mercator projection, or are they using the Gall-Peters projection? Because the Gall-Peters projection shows a much more accurate size of the land masses. But the United States is actually pretty small. When you look at the real projection, Africa is huge. On the Mercator map, Africa was made to look much smaller. The United States made to look much bigger. Australia made to look much bigger than it actually is as well, because it was designed for the West to make Western countries look larger, as if they had more power and more resources. The Mercator projection is the one that we were all taught in school about. It's the worst projection out there. It's the most skewed. The Gall-Peters is the most accurate. What's interesting, real quick tangent, the azimuthal equidistant map is what all of the pilots and ships and everybody uses to navigate. So I'm going to pull all these up really quick. We're going to look at the Mercator.
You are absolutely correct. Whoever just said in the chat room that Africa is the largest continent in the world.
Africa is
by
huge.
By far.
Okay, so this is the Mercator projection here. So you can see Africa is about this size here. Australia is this size here. The United States is this size here. And I get a nice little pop-up there. You look at the Gauss-Peter, and the Gauss-Peter projection is the most accurate. And this is what it should actually look like. I actually should do open image instead. This is what it actually should look like. So you see, Australia and the United States are pretty much the same size, but you see how much bigger South America is. You see how much bigger Africa is.
That's right.
And this is the actual world map. Now, what's interesting is the azimuthal equidistant projection. This one is the one that all of the ships
used to navigate?
All of the airplanes used to navigate the globe. This is the one right here. This is where the flat earthers come in and say, hey, this is, and this is legit. I'm saying that they legitimately use this. When you look at the flight paths, it's very interesting because you look them up on a globe and they seem to go in all these weird ways. You look at them on this projection here and they go in straight lines, and it makes perfect sense as why they're going there. So I can see back in 2015 when the flat earth thing was really big, why it would be, because you take a look at something like this and go, hey, the one thing that sticks out about this, and this is a little tangent, is you can see the degrees. You can see the degrees getting smaller as they move more towards the north. And this is Antarctica right here, which is represented because it's supposed to be a flat version of the globe. So it is legitimately getting smaller in coordinates. And as you can see, degrees. And you can see Australia on this map is like stretched out to symbolize it's a globe shape that we're looking at, much like the Gauss-Peter projection here. But it's just, you can see the Gauss-Peter projection, all of the degrees are all equal. But you look at the azimuthal. So I'm not saying anything about flat Earth or anything like that. We covered that way back in 2015. It led us to the whole idea that this whole place is just a holographic simulation anyways. But I still find it quite interesting that we have all these different representations of the Earth. And your hypothesis that you brought up when this conversation came up earlier was
that I think that it's not that the Earth is flat. It's rather that the Earth that we know is incomplete, and that there are large land masses that are being left out for one reason or another of our maps, and they are deliberately keeping this from us for one reason or another. I don't know why they would.
Elysium.
Yeah, Elysium is one prospect of it, and that's the idea that very wealthy, very powerful people need a place, quote unquote, to retreat to that regular people, the plebs, don't know about. And that's very possible. We see this kind of behavior over and over and over again with our elected leaders, with people that are, big time economic hitmen types. They are most of them believe that they are almost like a different species than us. They believe this. They believe that their bloodlines and the power that they were born into is something that is ancient and that goes back thousands of years. They really believe this.
You know what's interesting is that we had a video about this ancient Buddhist map that we found, and it seems to have disappeared. But we looked in the Chamber of Commerce and we found a 10,000-year-old ancient Buddhist map.
Yep.
10,000-year-old ancient Buddhist map. And I don't know how we got onto this topic, but this is in the Chamber of Commerce right here, and it's part of this article. I'm not going to read the article, but since we're talking about maps, this is the map that the Buddhists held on to. And according to this article, which you can't read clearly on the screen, but you can find it at the Chamber of Commerce, according to this map is what the Tibetan monks have been holding on to and the Chinese government has been trying to suppress. Now, what we find here is, again, the azimuthal equidistant projection. But not only do we find that, but outside of it, we find all these different seeming to be land masses. Now, there's two ways to interpret this. Number one, that these are other land masses that exist outside of our known parameters, outside of our known Earth, or that these are just continents all diagrammed out here, parts that exist here, spaced out here. So you can look at it one of two ways. But what if, as you were saying earlier, we have our land masses that we know of, flights are only allowed to go certain areas. They claim that flights don't go over the North or the South Pole because of the magnetic anomalies. You fly over the North or South Pole and your equipment starts going all messed up because you're transitioning from North to South. And so flights never go over the North or South Pole ever, period. But what if not only are there other land masses within this little projection here, what if there's land masses literally right outside of our view? And this is where we get Greys. This is where we get Dracos. This is where we get quote-unquote ETs. And they exist literally right outside of our known mapped geographic plane of existence that we live in. It's an interesting thought to ponder.
Another interesting thought to ponder is, what if it's not land masses that are outside on the globe, but rather inside?
Yeah. I mean,
that's another idea.
I think that's
inner Earth theory.
Originally, that's what you were alluding to. And
I think that could be the case, because we have so many things from ancient history up to today where it's in the collective consciousness that the world that we see outside when we look around is not all there is. There's something else, especially underground, in the deepest of caves and all these places. There's anomalies that can't be explained, having to do with gravity. There's all kinds of strange caves and crystal caves and places like that are said to be these entrances to the hollow earth. And that was what we had Brooks Agnew on the first time.
No. It was
first several times.
It was the second or third time.
Second or third time. You know, what we spoke about was the hollow earth theory. And he had a thing planned where it was an expedition to the hollow earth where they would go in from somewhere around the North Pole, or was it South Pole?
You know what's interesting is that he wanted to go in through the North Pole and take an icebreaker and what is it called? Yeah, iceberg breaker or something like that, and take it to the North Pole. Excuse me. However, Admiral Byrd wrote a diary, and he wrote a diary about how he went to the South Pole, not the North Pole. And as he crossed over the ice wall, he found another land that was inhabited and that there was a battle going on back and forth. Now, Admiral Byrd's diary is not disputed. It's something that people recognize as real. The writings in it and interpretations of what he wrote about is disputed. But he talked about how he crossed over the ice and he went into another world that was tropical. They're finding now, supposedly in Antarctica, little pockets of tropical areas underneath the ice. But according to this, the entrance to the hollow earth is actually through the South Pole. And you fly through the South Pole and you get into this place where it kind of like the gravitational... dips inwards. And then you find, something completely different there. And so if we're talking about hollow earth theory, which we are veering way off of time travel, but it's still interesting nonetheless, here's what I'm speculating. And there was a book that was talking about this. We talked about this back in 2015. What if we are inside of the earth? And the sky and the stars that we're looking at is actually the walls of the earth that we're inside of. And we have day to night transitions. And we've never really been able to break those boundaries and get even further. I mean, we've had, supposed rovers on Mars. They sent the 2 rovers out there. They were supposed to be there for like 2 months. They were there for like 20 years.
Yep.
There was other pictures of somebody going and manning one of the rovers, like fixing one of the rovers, like somebody walking supposedly on Mars. There were other NASA anomaly videos of the space shuttle supposedly flying, and then you see a man coming in there and adjusting the space shuttle, showing that whole scene of the space shuttle was completely and totally fake. And this came out in like the 80s or something like that. And so, how do we know we're really looking at Mars? How do we know we're really looking at all of that? So they say they've broken the boundaries. They say they have, but for some reason they haven't. Just recently, a bunch of billionaires supposedly went up to space, but they didn't go very far. They just went right outside of, right outside of the top of Earth and came back down. What if we are actually inside of it? And when Admiral Byrd broke out into this other world, he actually broke outside of the crust, rather than going into the crust. I've often wondered that. What do you guys and gals think out there?
That's a really interesting way to look at it, because how do we know that our eyes actually see everything upside down, and it's our brain that has taught itself over the first couple weeks of our life to interpret it as right side up. Did you know that?
Say that
when
again?
You see through your eyes,
your
eyes actually see everything upside down.
Yeah.
And it's just your brain that adjusts to it to make everything right side up.
Yeah, this is God's perfect design. He made our eyes upside down.
See upside down.
An accident.
Yeah.
And our brains change the thing.
Our brains are just that powerful that they switch it to be right side up, because it would just be a complete, mind fuck to be otherwise.
You look like you're hurting a little bit.
Are
you uncomfortable?
I'm just a little bit sore.
Okay.
But
if you want to wrap it up, we can wrap it up. I'm having a lot of fun with our people.
I'm having a lot of fun with our people too.
We can get back on track.
So I'm putting in Skype for you. Okay. 2003 Iraq War. Many believe that the claims that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction under his possession sometime before the war broke out were actually the cover-up for America's role in the war. Titor predicted, "Are you really surprised to find out that Iraq has nukes now, or is that BS to whip everyone into accepting the next war?" Some think Titor's prediction had come true with the onset of the Iraq War because he disappeared before 9/11 happened. He disappeared in, I think it was April of 2001. The Columbia Space Shuttle accident. In a series of cryptic messages, John Titor questioned NASA what they had been doing about those overheating issues. In 2003, the Columbia Space Shuttle was exhumed in flames and burned to pieces while entering the Earth's atmosphere. Many conspiracy theorists point out that the cryptic messages by Titor were actually a warning for NASA about the Columbia Space Shuttle accident. On the other hand, failed predictions. He had predicted that an American Civil War would break out in 2004. He also predicted the world would be engulfed by a mad cow disease and that the Olympics would be canceled, but more or less those events did not happen actually. So a new theory came up that explained why none of these events took place. Perhaps when John traveled back in time, he created a new timeline where none of these events ever took place. Or was this all a planned hoax? So, somewhere in 2009, a private investigator claimed that Larry Haber and his computer scientist brother John Rick Haber were the most likely men to be behind the conspiracy. This is because that both the brothers were tech geeks, and Larry was the CEO of a company named John Titor Foundation that was established after the time traveler's online appearance. Despite all these revelations, many die-hard fans still believe that this time traveler from 2036 wanted to save humanity from many disasters. Others say it was all a big publicity gig by the Haber brothers. Now, whether Titor was actually a time traveler or not, well, who knows? But as far as we're concerned, we've got an out-of-the-box sci-fi mumbo-jumbo that is more than enough to entertain those brains of ours, still stuck on time traveling. It's not that we're stuck on time traveling. It's that we are able to see outside the tiny box reality that most people are stuck in, and we see the events around us and the sequences of events around us as all being part of a game that we're all playing, because I really truly believe that we are in a simulation. I believe that with all of my heart. I've seen too much and experienced too much to say otherwise, and personally experienced too much and personally seen too much. It's too much evidence to even suggest otherwise in my own mind anymore.
Well, you know what's interesting is that when we came back from Egypt, we were talking about how the next mission is going to involve time travel in one way or another. Now, this was back in 2018.
2018.
We didn't understand it. We just knew the time travel was going to be some kind of thing that needs to be done in one way or another. And we were kind of speculating on what happened. One big Mandela effect, and you guys and gals tell me this in the chat. When did Tut die and how? So I'm going to put that out there and let some people answer in the chat. Please don't Google it. Just tell me how you remember it off the top of your head. And that was one event that we were looking at and saying, maybe something changed. And that was one of the catalysts as to why things changed.
Were you wanting me to answer that question, or?
Well, I want to give people a little bit of time.
To mull it
answer
over.
if they want to answer it in the chat, because I'm interested to see how people
respond to this question.
To it. And we will get to the Trump time traveler stuff in a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm getting some answers here. Nick, bravo. Tut was assassinated. Magus. That means badass in Greek. 14 and assassinated. Alyssa said 17 and poisoned. Buddha Dog says 19. He was killed at 13. What was the exact question? When was Tut? How did Tut die? And how old is he? How old was he? Poison. Everybody's saying that.
Yeah.
King Tut died at 19 in this timeline.
In this timeline, he died of an infection that happened because he had epilepsy. He also had something that's a lot like what I have. Actually, it's called Marfan syndrome, and it made his joints and very, very loose, and it made his heart a lot bigger than most people. You see this a lot in these kinds of birth defects in people who have had a lot of inbreeding in their family, and we would see this if the Egyptians had devolved into a form of it. It was like they were trying to recreate the Isis and Osiris thing with a brother and sister as husband and wife, and it's a terrible idea because you make the gene pool that shallow and you're going to have problems like this. However, he was not poisoned and he was not murdered, and he died several years later than what I remember learning as a small child up until I was even in college.
One of my past lives, and I was crucified in this lifetime for my role in this. But crucifixion wasn't the same as the Christian crucifixion. It was literally nailed and tied to a tree, and stones were thrown at you, and it was a big thing, and it was like people were like getting off on it, and they would do this regularly to people, and I was one of them that they did this to. We poisoned him at 13 to prevent what we knew was coming. I specifically remember this. I've talked about this past life before, and when we were talking about it, we were talking about it in the context of it historically happening, him being poisoned at 13. Many people in the chat, the majority of people in the chat that answered, said he was poisoned at 13.
I remember that as well.
Something changed.
I think I know what changed. I think whoever poisoned his father, his and Ankhesenamun, his sister's father, whoever poisoned him decided not to poison Tut for one reason or another. Whether I think maybe they saw that Tut was going in a different direction than his father did, and he was moving things back into the polytheism that had made Egypt so great in the first place, because it was based around consciousness. It wasn't based around a monotheistic deity that you have to worship or you burn in hell forever. It was based upon one's own consciousness and the elevation of it. And so I think maybe Tut was moving in more of that direction and making it great again. And it just so happened that he had a series of birth defects that just made it impossible to continue living, because he would fall a lot and he would get sick a lot, and he would, when he fell, I think what happened was he fell, he hit his head, and he had a skull fracture, but it was the kind of skull fracture that you get from falling. It wasn't the kind of skull fracture that you get from somebody bashing you in the head with something. And when they discovered this a few years ago, they said, I think people thought at first that he had been murdered at 19 because, he has a skull fracture. But what we've determined through MRI scans and things like that is that this was a very soft blow, but that because of his birth defects and things like that, his head swelled and they couldn't control the swelling, and he died. And this was just an accidental death. So that is very, very interesting to me, that there would be such a huge Mandela effect going back to ancient Egypt. What do you think about that?
I think that there's something to this, because in 2018, like I said, next mission is going to involve time travel. We got to go do something. I thought we were going to have to go back to Abydos and close the portal for the virus where it was opened in Abydos. And then we started to ponder on whether 1323 BC to 1313. Interesting. But we started to wonder if it had something to do with Tut, and if we needed to go back and fix something that went wrong with Tut. And our premise was maybe he wasn't supposed to die at 13, or maybe something went wrong. And then now all of a sudden, he died at 19, which significantly changes the timeline.
Oh, yeah. Huge.
Now, obviously, we're very connected to Egypt, so we're going to pay attention to Egyptian Mandela effects. This is the biggest one for me.
Yeah.
And I still can't wrap my head around it.
I think...
Then in 2020, during the portal situation, many would agree that we've moved into a tangent universe. Nick Bravo being one of the ones that wrote me while you and I were just talking about it amongst ourselves. Nick wrote me and said, "Hey, we've moved into a tangent." And I'm like, "Yeah, we've been."
You're spot on.
You're spot on, and we haven't been public about this.
Yeah, we've
and
been
that
very quiet.
Reaffirmed to me that others were also feeling it too. We were moved in 2012. I know that, into another timeline universe. Back then, the New Agers were talking about how it was the Ascension process, and that empty containers and vessels were walking around, and because consciousness was being evacuated, and they were calling them empty containers. We were calling them NPCs. But it just blows my mind. Like, what's next? How do we fix this? Or, again, going back to the tangent universe, is this just part of the deintegration process? You know, things have to get rough because we want nothing to do with this material world, and so things around us are going to start to devolve and crumble around us for the purpose of deintegration from the Matrix. We're not going to enjoy being in the Matrix anymore for that very reason. So we may be moving in the proper direction, even though it's not the most optimal or comfortable timeline. I just think we can deintegrate with a little more comfort, in my opinion. I think we can still make things right. But what do you think?
I think that we always have the opportunity to make things right, and we're discovering more and more and more every day. Every day that passes, we discover something new about this timeline or about this tangent universe and the way that it operates and how long it's going to last and what we need to do next and what the next sequence of events is to achieve the positive outcome that we're looking for, which is to get things back to a point of balance in the real fake universe, in the universe we originally came from. We want to set things right again, instead of it being the way it is with everything being wrong, because it has felt like everything is wrong the last several months. And I feel like it's because we know we're in a tangent universe, and that this tangent universe was built because we have very specific things that we need to do for the other timeline, for the other tangent universe we came from, that the laws of physics and things like that are slowed down. Everything's slowed down here so that we can strategize and figure out how to do what we need to do. And I think it's a benefit, but it's also a curse, because this is not a fun timeline or tangent universe to be in a lot of the time.
No, it's not. That's why we got to make the best of it.
Yeah, we have to make the best of it.
We have to find our own little ways to enjoy, to bring some positivity to the overwhelming negativity that we find ourselves in.
Which is why we do shows. Which is why we're here with you guys.
Why we moved to Las Vegas.
Why we moved to Las Vegas.
We moved to the party capital of the world, you know, to enjoy it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Timeline.
Please take us away on
the Trump conspiracy theory about time travel. Very interesting thing. I know that Trump was almost assassinated, or there was an assassination attempt while he was on the campaign trail. I knew that. The guy who attempted to assassinate him claimed to be a time traveler who came back to assassinate Trump because something horrible was going to happen as a result of his presidency. He was apprehended before anything could happen, and this happened in 2016 at a rally. I remember when this happened. I didn't remember where it happened. Can you guess where this happened? You already know the answer because I asked you this question before going out on air.
I had no idea.
I had no idea either. 2016 Donald Trump Las Vegas rally incident.
Wow.
Here in the epicenter of BTV. The Luxor Pyramid. The Luxor Pyramid being literally
Oh, wow.
50 yards away from Mandalay Bay,
Yeah.
where that big shooting took place. And in order to open up portals, you have to have an event like 9/11. You have to have mass casualties. The Mandalay Bay shooting happened. The portal at the Luxor opened. It was being reopened. I don't want to go into all that because that's going to take us into a whole new
Yeah, we don't want to
dimension.
discuss a lot of that.
But at a June 18, 2016 rally for Donald Trump's presidential campaign in Las Vegas, Michael Stephen Sanford attempted to grab a pistol of a Las Vegas Metropolitan Police officer providing security for the event. Upon arrest, after waiving his Miranda rights, Sanford claimed that he wished to kill Trump to prevent him from becoming president. Sanford was charged with disorderly conduct and being an illegal alien in possession of a firearm for having previously rented a pistol at a shooting range. Now, I have a huge problem with this. This guy was charged with disorderly conduct and for being an illegal alien in possession of a firearm for attempting to assassinate a presidential candidate.
That's insane.
What universe do you get a charge of disorderly conduct for an attempted assassination? I just realized this just now as I'm reading this. This guy got disorderly conduct for trying to grab a pistol and assassinating a potential president. I mean, this is absurd. You know, the whole Trump presidency, the way the media handled it, the way everything was flipped upside down. Who was it? Kathy Griffin, who posted when Trump got COVID. Is he dead yet? I hope he's dead. You know, she held up the image of his severed head.
Mm-hmm.
Snoop Dogg also, same thing, did a music video like that with a mock assassination.
What if we did that to Obama? Or
Back in
somebody
the day,
did that to Obama?
with any other president, that would be considered a threat and you'd have Secret Service at your door.
Oh, yeah.
During the Bush administration, people were having Secret Service showing up to their door for much, much, much less than that. When it comes to this man here, this guy pulls a gun from one of his security, attempts to assassinate him, and gets disorderly conduct. Kathy Griffin is just hailed up as this hero by the left for all of this.
It's gross.
And then after she posted, is he dead from COVID yet? She gets diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer or something like that. It just goes to show karma comes back to bite you.
Hell yeah, it does.
But Stanford, a British citizen, had a lengthy disorder of mental a lengthy history of mental disorders, and the incitement prompted criticism of mental health care in the UK, etc., etc., etc. So this was an event that really stuck out to me because he claimed, it doesn't say in the wiki article about him claiming to be a time traveler, but he claimed to be a time traveler coming from the future. Now, Trump is interesting because his uncle, we'll type in Donald Trump's uncle, was John G. Trump. And John G. Trump, forgive me for those of you that have already heard all this, many people probably have, was an American electrical engineer, inventor, and physicist, a professor at Massachusetts Institute of Technology from 1936 to 1973. He was a recipient of the National Medal of Science and a member of the National Academy of Engineering. Trump was noted for developing rotational radiation therapy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We'll jump to this
So
here.
the credentials are there.
In early 1943, 2 days after the death of Nikola Tesla, the FBI ordered the Office of Alien Property Custodian to seize Tesla's belongings. Trump was called to analyze Tesla's artifacts, which were being held in government custody. After a 3-day investigation, Trump's report concluded that there was nothing which would constitute a hazard in unfriendly hands. So John Trump was a physicist who was tasked with going and examining all of Nikola Tesla's research. Athena is back in the house. Athenia is back in the house. Thank you so much for the super chat. A speedy and healthy recovery to
Aw,
Cherie.
thank you so much.
Yes, speedy
Thank you,
healing to
Athenia.
Cherie. Yes.
You are beautiful. Thank you.
We're getting there. We're getting there. The rhizotomy is a very, very, very painful procedure.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be even more painful for the first couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, hopefully the pain will dissipate.
Yeah, it'll be next to nothing for anywhere from like 6 months to 2 years. So I think it's going to be worth it in the end. And it's just a rough couple of days.
So when I heard Trump time traveler conspiracy, I thought, what kind of ridiculousness is this?
Yeah.
Then I see this connection here. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. He had Tesla's research.
Mm-hmm.
He told the government there was nothing useful in there. But did he actually find something useful? And did he develop some kind of technology based on Tesla's research? That connection there now all of a sudden makes me go, let's take a look at this. Let's see what actually is going on here. What do you think?
I think it was his uncle.
Yeah, that was his uncle.
Yeah, his uncle. Yeah. I think this is a very interesting concept because it intersects with several different not conspiracy theories. I don't want to say conspiracy theories because it's not really a conspiracy theory. It's more like a possibility. It intersects between time travel, Trump, Tesla, technology, future technology, the future itself. All of these intersect with this particular subject. So it's fascinating to me. Go ahead.
We know for a fact that Trump used Cambridge Analytica to use a looking glass type of technology to figure out what people wanted and how to win the election. This technology takes all of the communications, internet, it takes everything.
It's part of Tyler, actually.
It's part of Tyler, AI, and it returns data. And as I've said before, that would seem nefarious on the surface if he was doing it for the purpose of gaining power. But he delivered everything that he promised. That's what makes it different. He wasn't running on his platform. He wasn't running on his desires. He wasn't running on his ideas. He was running on your ideas. He was running on the people's ideas. Every one of his policies were based on what the people wanted.
Yep.
Not what the deep state wanted, not what was best for corporations, what the people wanted.
Yeah.
I find that to be remarkable.
It really is. After an entire lifetime of seeing presidents that don't do anything except lie and lie and lie some more and invade other countries and play ball with the worst of the worst players in the world, while spouting off all this garbage about how wonderful they are and how we need to go after these other countries because the reality is they're just not giving us their resources in the amount that we would like, and we would like to invade them and take those resources. It's just it was such a breath of fresh air to have that guy. It really was. And I think that's why so many people are having trouble not letting go, because it's not really something we need to let go. It's more something we need to find ways of being happy, like Chris said, despite the fact that, things are not happy in a few areas in our lives. I think everybody feels like that right now. But being here with all of you guys, with our BTB tribe, makes us happy. It's sometimes it's the nectar of life that keeps us going for another week or another couple of days, because the energy in this chat alone is powerful. It is incredibly powerful. It's incredibly healing. We love you guys so much. Okay, so
I totally agree. Let me address something that Electra said,
please,
real quick. Makes you wonder if the so-called win was a 5D move to expose the evil. And we have speculated that ourselves as well, because what were we looking at? We were looking at Trump 2021, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that would have happened, the deep state wouldn't have gone away. They would have come back even harder.
Yeah.
Now they're seemingly pacified. And while the totalitarian measures are coming in, they're coming in at a much slower rate. And I think a huge cataclysm has been avoided by Trump stepping away for the time being, gathering more evidence to hang all of these people with. And that's a possibility. And if he does have a looking glass technology, then he knew what would happen if he didn't step away or if he did. He seemed to say all the right things when all political psychology and science tells you the right thing to say is this. He would say the opposite, and he would win every time. Mm-hmm. Which made me go, wow, this guy is amazing. This guy's brilliant. There's something to this guy. He's going against the norm and still coming out on top in every single situation. Even calling out Wuhan, mm-hmm. calling out all of that. At the time, it looked like he was being ridiculous because that's the way the mainstream media was painting him out to be, mm-hmm. but he was actually telling the truth about everything in the face of all ridicule, in the face of everything. Gathering more support while at the same time minimizing support of his adversaries, the mainstream media, the deep state, all those people. So by doing so, it seemed like he was being taken down by his own words, when in actual fact, he was exposing the mainstream media and deep state, and people were losing faith in all of them. And then mm-hmm. as soon as he left office, 70+% of viewership gone from the MSM.
Yeah.
Gone.
As a whole, not just certain networks associated with certain political parties.
Everybody.
All of them.
Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, literally everybody.
Yep. It was across the board.
Newsmax went up.
Mm-hmm.
One America, kind of, except for they pussied out.
What about that Falun Gong one?
The Falun Gong one.
Is it ITN or something?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either, but yeah, it's like this one that's run by Falun Gong practitioners that have fled places like Wuhan.
You were mentioning that there's a theory that Hunter Biden laptop was actually planted by China, but not the Chinese Communist Party, but rather the Falun Gong, mm-hmm. those who are opposing the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah.
Because the CCP is just one faction.
Yeah.
And they're losing control of China. And there's another faction there that's trying to take control away from them. So we hear China, 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 China. We look at it all as one big whole, but realistically what we're talking about is the CCP. It's not all of China, it's the CCP.
Yeah.
Within China itself, there is a civil war being fought to try to take power away from the CCP. So it's possible that laptop was planted by Chinese, I don't want to say operatives, but Chinese resistance?
Yeah, Chinese resistance. That's it.
That's a good way to put it.
Much better way to put it, because
yeah.
if you if you're talking about Hunter Biden or Joe Biden, you're talking about the CCP.
Mm-hmm.
You're just talking about agents working under the CCP umbrella.
NTD. That's it.
NTD is the name of that network that we were talking about. They went up. All these ones that were providing the crackpot conspiracy theories and the baseless claims were the ones that went up. Why would everybody be so interested in such content and so disinterested in what the mainstream media is saying unless there's some truth to it and collectively you feel it?
That's what I told that USA Today intern that did that hit piece on me. And she didn't print it, but she did print one statement, though, that I'm so glad got printed. And I said, the fact that people are flocking to alternative sources of information is a testament to how much faith people have lost in the mainstream media. Regardless of whether the information is true or not, they're flocking to alternative sources because they have lost complete faith in the mainstream media. She left that in the article, and I thought, great, at least I got that message out there. And then following that, the ratings spoke for themselves when they started to plummet. Another super chat from Brandon Hope.
Thank you.
Let me send the link, but watch it.
It's a woke world.
It's
Okay.
a woke world. We'll check it out.
remember that. Yeah.
Let me see. Brandon, I can actually make you a moderator temporarily. So I've just made you a moderator temporarily. Feel free to post that link there for everybody to check that out. So,
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Thank you for the super chat too. So we've been broadcasting for a few hours now. How are you feeling?
I'm okay. Okay, so apparently this comes from it's a Disney spoof actually, and it's called It's a Woke World After All. And it's a former Disney animator that's pushing back on Disney's wokeness and deference to the CCP, which he said Walt Disney himself would have hated. I think that's bravo. That's I can't wait to watch this. I wonder how long it is.
Brandon just posted the link.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you,
we'll watch
Brandon,
that.
for that. Okay, so let's move on here real quick. Of course, everybody has heard of the adventures of Barron Trump. Barron being Trump's youngest son. I think he's the youngest one.
Yeah, he's the youngest.
Yeah, and the guy's like 6.5 feet tall now.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he's autistic. He's got a few issues. And these leftists on
They're
The
monsters.
View and CNN were attacking him. And it's like, they're like, what's wrong with Barron?
How low do you have to be?
That was disgusting. You don't go after somebody's family.
Well, you have to be scum to attack a child
He was
with
like
autism.
13 at the time.
A child with autism, a preteen with, or barely a teenager with autism, that's a really tough age to have autism, because you're already socially awkward enough being a teenager and being a fresh teenager, like 13 years old. On top of that, if you're autistic, your life just is terrible. Your social life is terrible already, and then you've got people, these old ladies on TV talking crap about you. I mean, that you'd have to be really, really low.
Yeah.
Ugh.
There's a lot of scumbags out there.
Little Barron Trump.
George Bush, Hillary Clinton, all of them. But never once have I heard anybody like Alex Jones or anybody like us start attacking their young kids.
No.
Chelsea Clinton, yeah, after she became politically active.
Right.
But as she was a child, nobody attacked her.
No.
Because we have decency. These things, I don't even call them people. These things don't have decency to attack a small child like that. It's disgusting. Anyways.
Yeah, but that's interesting that there's that book, Barron Trump. It was written in 1893.
1893. So I'm just going to read you what's on this website here. So I'm on the Office of Congress Library website and came across this book written in 1893. Look at the title. Marvelous Underground Journey of Barron Trump.
Marvelous Underground Journey of Barron Trump.
This book is about a boy named Barron Trump who found a secret portal and time traveled. But that's not the craziest part. Donald Trump's son name is Barron, but it gets crazier. Do you think they look like the same person? They look pretty similar.
Look very similar.
Gets even better than this, though. In the book, Barron Trump had a mentor he looked up to. Guess what his name was? Don.
Don? Are you serious? Don wasn't even a popular name in 1893.
All this shit in the book takes place in Russia. Russia.
Russian collusion.
Melania Trump. Child Barron Trump. 4 years later, in 1896, the same author writes a sequel to the book, but he calls it The Last President.
Wow.
In 1900.
Oh,
this is when shit gets real. The book is about a very wealthy man who lived in New York on Fifth Avenue who ran for president, but wasn't expected to win. Trump Tower, 725 Fifth Avenue.
That's so weird.
You can't make this up. Remember, this book was written over 124 years ago. But anyways, after his inauguration, he started picking people for his cabinet. And guess who was one of the person he picked? Pence.
Oh, wow.
In the book, the Secretary of Agriculture is Lafay Pence.
Oh, wow.
So in The Last President, he picks Lafay Pence. So we had Trump and Pence. Yep, Pence.
That's crazy.
You can't make this up. Y'all go read the book and see. But I'm not done yet. In 1943, one of the most famous inventors named Nikola Tesla died from a blood clot. Before his death, he claimed that he built a time machine and used it to travel back in time. After he died in the United States, government took all of his inventions and notes the name of his office that was seized in the work, the Office of Alien Property. After they looked it up, they passed it to the FBI. The Office of Alien Property Custodian was an office within the government of the United States during World War I and again during World War II, serving as custodian of enemy property to property that belonged to U.S. enemies. Just so you know, that's a real government office. After they gave up on trying to figure out his inventions, they hired an outside engineer who could understand the work of Nikola Tesla. Guess who this dude was? John G. Trump, as we just mentioned. John Trump is the grandfather of Donald Trump. No.
It's the uncle.
No. He's his uncle. This is incorrect. But after studying the Nikola Tesla time notes, inventions of Nikola Tesla, he told the government they didn't find anything. Fun fact, Donald Trump's mother's name is Mary and his father's middle name is Christ. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yeah, Donald Trump's father's middle name is Christ. And he was born on the night of a total lunar eclipse. Frederick Christ Trump.
Oh, wow.
What do you think about that?
I think that's interesting. That is incredibly interesting, especially since... Sorry, I had to rub my leg because it was bothering me.
We can take a break and I can rub it for you if you'd like.
Aw. Maybe in a minute.
We can wrap it up here in a second. I think this is about the last piece of info I want to go over. But
Are you sure? Because I'm having a lot of fun. I just, I might need my leg rubbed in a minute.
No. I will. Frederick Christ Trump. So Donald Trump was born in 1946.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew that.
June 14th, 15th, 1946. Total lunar eclipse. This is what the lunar eclipse looked like on that day.
Oh, wow.
So on his birthday was a total lunar eclipse. Remember when we saw the solar eclipse?
Mm-hmm.
And we saw the portal opened?
Mm-hmm.
And we realized that that's when the portals open during the eclipses?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Strange things happen during the eclipses.
So I'm wondering if his uncle was maybe the family was helping him participating in experiments, using his time travel device that he had built. And one of them was, his nephew, Orange Man. And he went back to the 1890s, and he stayed long enough that somebody wrote a book about him based on what he told them about his life in the future, because he'd already seen the future. So he went back, somebody wrote that book. He comes back here and proceeds to fulfill that destiny that he foresaw. What do you think?
It's possible. I'm not saying that it happened. All I'm saying is that here's all the puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
It's up to the listeners out there to decide. I think this is a fun topic to veer away and get into, some fun stuff. It's entertaining.
It is.
It's very coincidental.
I
don't believe in coincidences, though.
It's way more than coincidental.
Is Donald Trump a time traveler? The question has been circulated on conspiracy websites for several months and is backed by various pieces of evidence, such as Donald Trump's uncle, etc., etc., etc. So,
the fact that we can
all
verify.
these occurrences. Oh, that's creepy.
Go ahead.
What is that? Mom dresses daughter in adorable food fashion.
Oh, that's creepy.
That is creepy.
That's bizarre.
It is creepy.
I dressed up as a pickle.
I turned myself into
for
a pickle.
Halloween. Yeah, I know. To get out of going to therapy with me.
I did. It
was just hand therapy. It was for your benefit.
I'm Pickle Chris. So there's all the data right there on the Trump time traveler conspiracy theory, the John Titor predictions too. I think the show could have flowed a little bit better with the John Titor stuff, but I had no idea that he had posted that much.
Yeah,
but I think we hit on all the key points to keep people entertained.
Yeah, I think so.
It is worth noting too. We had a guy on, and the video got a shit ton of views. Trying to pull it up here.
I don't know if Trump is of higher consciousness or if he came to this world as our support. I'm not sure. I think he might be a very specific program that is meant to MAGA. I mean, it's like a MAGA program that brings this country back to a place of balance, and that balance was then again thrown off 4 years later. So I don't know.
The Mandela effect is an internet phenomenon where people remember slight differences in the timeline. Is this simply due to bad memory, or could it be evidence of a parallel universe?
In this video, we will break down our pick for the top 5 Mandela effects that are more than just coincidence when you use your third eye to see beyond the veil. Number 5, Forrest Gump. Many people remember the line, "Life is like a box of chocolates." However, in this timeline, the wording is a bit different.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Thousands of people seem to remember the phrase, "Life is like a box of chocolates," instead of "was." In fact, countless YouTube channels hosting this clip title their videos with the word "is." This is not to mention the hundreds of memes found on Google Images bearing the same phrase. But what does Tom Hanks have to say about it?
Mom always said life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Mom always said life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
So was your life like a box of chocolates? Or is your life like a box of chocolates?
Life is a box of chocolates, Forrest.
I say it depends on what the meaning of "was" is, jerk.
Number 4. Luke, I am your father.
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
In the iconic film series Star Wars, the climactic point for every viewer was the revelation that Luke Skywalker was the son of Darth Vader. However, the line no longer exists within the film, having been replaced with,
No, I am your father.
Once again, we're faced with the idea that hundreds of thousands of people have been misquoting what is arguably the most iconic line in cinema history. However, let's see how James Earl Jones himself remembers it.
When I first saw the dialogue that said, Luke, I am your father, I said to myself, he's lying. I wonder how they're going to play that liar. Luke, I am your father.
But perhaps this was just a simple slip of the tongue. Or was it?
Luke, I am your father.
So what do you think? Is this merely faulty memory?
It is useless to resist.
Or is this proof of a parallel timeline?
That's not true. That's impossible.
Search your feelings, you know it to be true.
Number 3. New Zealand, a beautiful country in the southern hemisphere located in the southwestern Pacific Ocean, at least in this timeline. However, hundreds of thousands of people remember this small country as being located somewhere else. While some people remember New Zealand as the same relative size, located northeast of Australia, a large amount of people remember it being a distinct landmass directly to the west. In a random scene from the 1993 film Dazed and Confused, a remnant of this alternate geography can be seen. It is worth mentioning that a similar landmass might also be seen in an older episode of the AMC series, Mad Men. However, debunkers have quickly pointed out that this may be a topography legend instead.
You're fucking high.
What's interesting about both globes is that New Zealand doesn't seem to exist in its current location. So what do you think? Is this evidence of a major geographical change?
Are you saying the map is wrong?
Oh dear, yes.
Or are hundreds of thousands of people simply dazed and confused?
I am definitely not high.
Number 2. Snow White. Everyone remembers the classic phrase, "Mirror, mirror on the wall," spoken by the evil queen. And many remember the wording written in text during the opening scene. The only problem is, this phrase doesn't actually exist. At least not in this timeline. Instead, the phrase goes,
Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
Now this is where things get interesting. According to the English translation of the original fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm, the correct phrase is,
Magic mirror in my hand, who is the fairest of the land?
But this doesn't quite coincide with the original German phrase, which is
Spiegeln, Spiegeln, an der Wand.
That literally translates to mirror, mirror on the wall. So the question is, are people simply remembering the old German translation? Or has Snow White been changed as part of the Mandela effect?
Magic mirror on the wall, who now is the fairest one of all?
Before we get to number 1, here's a few honorable mentions.
Which sounds right to you? Interview with the vampire or interview with a vampire?
It's another blockbuster year for Hollywood, the motion picture Interview with a Vampire.
In the film Star Wars, A New Hope, did you ever notice C-3PO has a silver leg?
Did you hear that? They shut down the main reactor. Will be destroyed for sure. This is madness.
How do you remember the quote from Field of Dreams?
If you build it, he will come.
And how about the quote from Jaws, we're gonna need a bigger boat?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
And the list goes on and on, from Bible passages to company logos. Some are merely due to bad memory, but others may very well be the Mandela effect.
Number 1, the Berenstain Bears. Many of us learn to read by reading the adventures of this family of bears. This is why so many people ran for their basements and attics when they realized the name was spelled with an A instead of an E. While this may seem trivial in and of itself, the most interesting part of this Mandela effect is the mountains of evidence showing Berenstain, not Berenstain. Taking a trip through the Wayback Machine for a website called 80scartoons.net, several entries can be found containing the name Berenstain in the episode list. Then suddenly, on August 5th, 2001, the names appear as Berenstain. That is, of course, except for the URL itself, which remains Berenstain to this day. But who better to defer to than Jonathan Reichman, the trademark attorney behind Spider-Man, Batman, Barbie, Babar the Elephant, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the Berenstain Bears.
So what do you think of the Mandela effect? Has half the world been struck by foggy memory in the last few years? Or is it compelling evidence that our timeline has been changed and that our reality is not as static as we might think?
Let us know what you think in the comments below. What's your favorite Mandela effect? And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more amazing insights from Beyond the Veil.